Chapter 1571, Blocking 2 Consecutive Attacks. 1571 Blocking 2 Consecutive Attacks. Ling Han completely ignored Tan Feng, and his eyes were only focused on Tan Yun. With a thought, a divine light suddenly burst from his body and soared into the sky. This column of light was so brilliant that it could perhaps be seen from an entire planet away. He was a being from the immortal realm. It really couldn't be any more evident. Tan Feng wore an expression of absolute astonishment, and it was as if he had been slapped across the face. He was rendered completely speechless. This was inconceivable. A measly eternal river tier elite had actually managed to grasp the regulations of the immortal realm and netherworld at the same time. This was turning the impossible into possible. However, he quickly regained his composure, and said, "So what? Was a member of his Tan clan going to die for nothing?" His gaze became cold, and he was just about to launch another attack. "Hold it there," Tan Yun suddenly said, stopping him in his tracks. Tan Feng was extremely domineering, yet he was as obedient as could be before Tan Yun. He immediately stepped back respectfully, though there were question marks floating in his mind. Could it be that third elder knows about this 8 stones forbidden land or whatnot? Is he apprehensive because of them? Tan Yun gazed at Ling Han, and an idea gradually formed in his mind. As descendants of cultivators who had been banished from the celestial realm, they were all aware of how to return to the celestial realm. They needed to fuse the regulations of the 2 realms. Doing so would allow them to open the gates to the celestial realm. However, in the countless tens of millions of years after being banished, no one had ever managed to achieve this feat. The regulations of the 2 realms were impossible to fuse together, just like fire and water were impossible to fuse together. Regardless of which realm one was in, the regulations of that realm would always suppress and erase the regulations that one had grasped from the other realm. Even coexistence was difficult, so just how difficult would fusion be? Thus, returning to the celestial realm was merely used as a slogan. It was nothing but a dream. Now, however, it was as if they had seen a flicker of hope. They would pour all of their resources into raising Ling Han such that he could help them open the gates to the celestial realm. They would then kill him after entering. In any case, he would be able to open the gates once he became an earth demon. However, there were several heaven demons in the Tan clan. Thus, it wouldn't make a difference even if fused the regulations of the 2 realms and became an earth demon. After all, earth demons were absolutely no match for heaven demons. Entering the celestial realm was a dream of all those who were descendants of those who had been banished from the celestial realm. In fact, the importance of this dream was transcendent above all else, including something as serious as the death of an important clan member. "Don't rely on some forbidden land and whatnot to threaten the Tan clan," he said with a chuckle. He naturally couldn't allow a junior to look down on him, and he continued, "Even Saint Kings will possess nothing but raw power upon entering the netherworld. They'll be inferior to even yellow demons." Ling Han burst into laughter upon hearing this. He was unfazed even in the presence of an earth demon. The Hysteria Demon Master and the others couldn't help but nod in their minds upon seeing this. This young man truly possessed some tremendous courage. "Senior, even I'm able to fuse the regulations of the 2 realms, so the ancestor of my clan has naturally done so as well." Ling Han started to bluff again. In any case, no one here could call his bluff. If they wanted to, they were welcome to go to the immortal realm to verify his claims. However, Tan Yun was no fool, and he smilingly said, "If an ancestor of the 8 stones forbidden land has already fused the regulations of the 2 realms together, then wouldn't they have returned to the celestial realm already?" This was a hole in his bluff. Ling Han sucked in a deep breath. He had been too focused on bluffing, yet he had accidentally taken the bluff too far. His mind whirred, and he said, "How can a lowly forbidden land such as yours understand the true power of the 8 stones forbidden land? How about this? I'll block one of Senior's attacks to display the strength of the 8 stones forbidden land." Everyone was astounded upon hearing this. Who else spoke like this? Ling Han was referring to Tan Yun as senior on the one hand, yet on the other hand, he was denigrating the Tan clan as a lowly forbidden land. Just how much disdain did he hold toward them? However, this young man was truly quite courageous. He was actually offering to withstand the attack of an earth demon. Sure. Tan Yun replied calmly. It was as if his emotions hadn't been affected at all. He raised a hand and grabbed at Ling Han. This was only a casual strike. However, just how powerful were earth demons? The power of regulations circulated around his hand, and this was accompanied by the stunning brilliance of tens of millions of heavenly bodies. This strike was so powerful that even yellow demons wouldn't be able to withstand it. He has to dodge this. Otherwise, he'll definitely be caught. Ling Han channeled the indestructible heaven scroll, causing a faint layer of golden light to shimmer around his body. Meanwhile, numerous symbols started to light up on the surface of his skin, their structures so complicated and profound that even heaven demons wouldn't be able to comprehend them. Wang. Tan Yun's strike landed, yet it was forcefully blocked by Ling Han. Pu. All of the demon masters choked in shock upon seeing this, including Tan Feng. Ling Han had genuinely blocked it. A mere Eternal River Tier Junior had genuinely managed to block the strike of an earth demon. Was this for real? Was this really not an act? Tan Yun retracted his hand, a look of astonishment on his face. He indeed held a very high opinion of Ling Han, him being someone who had fused the regulations of the two realms at just the Eternal River tier. This was someone who had the potential to enter the celestial realm. However, that was merely Ling Han's future potential, not his current power. How terrifying. What kind of freak is he? However, Ling Han didn't feel too good, either. He had faced the attack of an earth demon head-on, and only he knew that several of his godly bones had already been broken. Fortunately, the indestructible heaven scroll was incredibly powerful, and it was able to rapidly heal these wounds. It was just that his origin power had been completely drained after blocking this attack. Right now, he was in a state of extreme weakness. He couldn't hide this from the demon masters, yet it was because they could see this clearly that they were even more stunned. Ling Han had indeed relied on his own power to block the strike of an earth demon. He was truly going to defy the heavens. A fervent expression instantly appeared in Tan Yun's eyes. He was certain that Ling Han had practiced some extremely powerful technique. Was because of this that he possessed such astonishing abilities. If the Tan clan could obtain this inheritance. Gasp. It was most likely because he practiced this cultivation technique that Ling Han was able to fuse the regulations of the two realms. However, he had also claimed that there were 10 elders in the 8 Stones Forbidden Land, all of whom possessed the ability to fuse the regulations of the two realms. Judging by his performance, there was indeed a chance that this was possible. If they all charged over, with their battle prowess not diminishing, would the Tan clan be able to withstand their onslaught? He silently pondered over this. However, he quickly reached a decision in his mind. This was a massive opportunity, and he would obtain it for the Tan clan. Young man, why don't you come to our clan as a guest? If your clan members come, I'll naturally allow them to take you back. He reached over again. Boom. The sky was instantly blotted out by an indescribably powerful demonic hand. How was Ling Han going to block this attack? The ultimate defensive power of the indestructible heaven scroll had already been exhausted, and he couldn't enter the Black Tower, either. Ling Han was already out of options. The demonic hand pressed down, yet Ling Han's eyes suddenly lit up, their radiance soaring through the sky. Even Tan Yun faltered slightly upon seeing this. In fact, even he didn't dare to make contact with this light. He hurriedly retracted his hand. This was the light of Tao. Ling Han had received the recognition of heaven and earth after comprehending how to fuse the regulations of the two realms together, and at the same time, the light of Tao had also descended from heaven and earth. Ling Han had absorbed this light with his eyes. By unleashing it now, he managed to block another attack from the Supreme Elite. Fuck. The Hysteria Demon Master and the others were all transfixed with shock. If it were them facing Tan Yun, they would only be able to scuttle around like mice. However, this Eternal River tier elite had actually managed to block 2 consecutive attacks from Tan Yun. Although 2 attacks didn't seem like much, this was nothing short of a heaven-defying feat. Even they couldn't help but want to kneel in admiration. Meanwhile, Tan Feng was rendered completely speechless. This young man was truly an unfathomable freak. Tan Yun remained unfazed, and he even smiled as he said, "Young man, what other techniques can you use?" He reached over and grabbed at Ling Han for the third time. How was Ling Han going to block this attack? Wang. The large demonic hand reached over, and it was as if both heaven and earth were resonating in unison. When in the netherworld, demon masters represented the will of heaven and earth. How can I block this? What should I do? Chapter 1572, There's always someone stronger. Chapter 1572, There's always someone stronger. Ling Han was out of options. He had already used all of his trump cards. Although he could still use some celestial techniques, the limit of his cultivation level meant that he wouldn't even be able to rival yellow demons, much less earth demons. Moreover, now that he couldn't enter the Black Tower, he didn't even have the ability to escape. Fortunately, Tan Yun only wanted to capture him, not kill him. As such, he still had time. Once Small Tower awoke, he wouldn't need to be afraid anymore. Boom. The large demonic hand blotted out heaven and earth as it descended. Hair, Old Tan III, how despicable of you. You're actually targeting a measly eternal river tier cultivator. Moreover, you've already failed twice. You're truly bringing shame to old geezer Tan. A teasing voice suddenly traveled over, and it was surprisingly quicker than Tan Yun's attack. Moreover, it clearly traveled into every single person's ears. Peng. Tan Yun's hand descended, yet it was unable to press down no matter what. It was forcefully stopped 30 or so meters from Ling Han. At some unknown time, two people had already appeared beside Ling Han. One was a hunchbacked elder whose hair was all white and who was radiating an aura of age. It was as if he might suddenly keel over and die at any moment. The other person was a sturdy and tall man whose upper body was naked. He was dressed in a beastskin skirt, and it was as if he were a savage. No one took an extra glance at the savage. Instead, they were all staring at the white-haired elder. This elder didn't appear special at first glance, yet upon closer inspection, one's entire focus and mind would be attracted by him. It was as if their minds had entered a swamp that they couldn't escape from. Everyone was drenched in cold sweat when they finally managed to compose themselves. However, their bodies felt weak, and even their spirit and energy had been drained by a significant amount. Gasp! Who is this old man? Tan Yun had initially been calm and composed, yet he couldn't help but feel surprised now. Friend. Senior, are you from the 8 Stones Forbidden Land? It appears as if you're familiar with our ancestor. Meanwhile, Ling Han was astonished as he gazed at the savage-looking man. That was none other than Go Li. Go Li winked with a smile upon catching his gaze, and said, "Didn't I say so before? I said that we'll definitely meet again." The other demon masters were all shocked by what they heard. Senior. Tan Yun actually referred to that old man as senior. One had to realize that Tan Yun was already an earth demon. That being the case, just how powerful was this old man, someone who he had referred to as senior? There was only one possible answer. This old man was a heaven demon. The old heaven demon chuckled, and said, "Time truly flies by. At that time, you were still a little rascal who ran around butt naked, yet you've already grown up to become a mighty figure who can rule over an entire territory now." The demon masters all wore peculiar expressions. Senior, you're truly skilled at denigrating others. Even though everyone has experienced a similar childhood, saying this before an earth demon elite is probably taking things a bit too far. Tan Yun's face flushed beet red. At his cultivation level, one should have been able to remain calm and composed like a mountain. However, these words had been uttered by a heaven demon, and there were so many demon masters standing beside them and listening. How could he not feel humiliated? Ling Han couldn't help but laugh in his mind. Go Li had most likely been raised by this old man. Both young and old were just as wickedly offensive as the other. However, he liked this. Senior, it appears as if you're familiar with our ancestor. Tan Yun forcefully composed himself, and he resolutely tried to change the topic. The old heaven demon pondered for a moment before replying, "That's already a matter from hundreds of millions of years ago. I had initially wanted to cooperate with your ancestor on a matter of great significance, yet it's a pity that old geezer Tan was far too cowardly." Heh. Great, I've been denigrated again. However, Tan Yun didn't dare to talk back to him. That was a heaven demon. These were beings who stood at the pinnacle of the netherworld and peered down at the world. Their power was simply unfathomable. He pondered for a while before saying, "Senior, this person killed a disciple of the Tan clan. Since you're acquainted with our ancestor, please allow me to take him with me. I'm sure that our ancestor will be grateful for this favor." "What, are you trying to use old geezer Tan to pressure me?" The old heaven demon humphed, and 2 clouds of black air burst from his nostrils. They then transformed into 2 divine spears that slashed at the sky, instantly causing heaven and earth to lose their luster. A sense of apprehension rose in everyone's heart. At the same time, everyone beneath the level of Genesis tier fell to their knees. They were stunned by this overwhelming aura. Only Ling Han was an exception. He had been recognized by heaven and earth twice, so from some point of view, he could also represent heaven and earth. Thus, his status wasn't lower than that of the Genesis tier demon masters. Tan Yun hurriedly bowed, and said, "I would never dare to." Just like how he had pressured the Hysteria demon master and the others into obedience before, he was now being pressured into obedience by the old heaven demon. He had no option but to play to his whims. This was the influence of strength. The old heaven demon waved his hand, and said, "For the sake of old geezer Tan, I won't press you any further. Go on, return to wherever you need to go." Senior, Tan Yun was unwilling to accept this outcome. That brat had killed a prodigy of the Tan clan, and he more so possessed a paramount secret technique. How could he give up so easily? "I'm not asking for your opinion," the old heaven demon said with a humph. He ruthlessly lashed out with his palm. Pa! Tan Yun was instantly sent flying, and he quickly became a small black dot in the distance, disappearing into the vast and boundless galaxy. The old heaven demon then turned around to face Tan Feng and the others, asking, "What? Do you people also need me to send you on your way?" Tan Feng hurriedly shook his head, and exclaimed, "No. There's no need to trouble you, senior." "Then hurry up and scram," the old heaven demon humphed. Yes, I'll scram right away." Tan Feng frantically grabbed the 4 disciples of his clan before releasing his golden path and fleeing into the distance. "Tan clan, I'll definitely remember the kindness that you showed me today," Ling Han suddenly said. "I'll make sure to repay this favor in the future." Tan Feng suddenly ground to a halt, a murderous expression appearing on his face. He almost gave in to the urge to turn around and smack Ling Han to death. However, upon thinking of the old heaven demon, cold sweat involuntarily formed on his forehead. He didn't dare to make another peep as he fled into the distance. The old heaven demon clapped his hands, and said, "The show is over, it's time to leave now." Although his voice was soft, this was the decree of a heaven demon. Who dared to disobey him? The demon masters hurriedly grabbed their disciples and descendants before unleashing their golden paths and leaving. They certainly didn't want to be smacked flying by the old heaven demon. "Young man, come here, accompany me for a walk." The old heaven demon's voice was extremely amicable as he gestured for Ling Han to come over. Meanwhile, Go Li smiled and said, "Filth King Ling, don't be shy. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's not like you're a small girl or anything." Ling Han rolled his eyes in reply. This person couldn't be treated. He clasped his hands in respect, and said, "I still haven't thanked Senior for stepping in to help me." "It was nothing," the old heaven demon replied with a chuckle. He started to walk forward, and Ling Han and Go Li both followed beside him, one to the left and one to the right. However, they both lagged a small step behind him. "Young man, I assume that you already know about the celestial realm," the old heaven demon said as he glanced at Ling Han. He had retracted his aura, and he seemed like an especially ordinary old man. "Yes, I do," Ling Han replied with a nod. His answer was short and to the point. There was no need to show off before this kind of powerful being. The old heaven demon nodded, and said, "Then that saves me from having to explain." Ling Han didn't interrupt him, and he simply waited for the old heaven demon to continue. "My name is Ouyang Taishan," the old heaven demon said. "Moreover, I also have another identity. I'm the 9th elder of the Heaven-Crushing Alliance." Heaven-Crushing Alliance. Chapter 1573 Ancient Realm. 1573 Ancient Realm. The heavens were paramount, and even saints and demon masters had to act according to the will of the heavens. Defying the heavens would mean facing heavenly tribulation, which could obliterate one's body and soul. What did it matter even if one were at the Genesis tier? They would still have to face immortals' calamity once every 100 million years. If they couldn't overcome these tribulations, they would be cursed by misfortune. Thus, it would be useless even if they still had a lengthy lifespan, they wouldn't be able to escape the fate of death. As such, the heavens couldn't be defied, nor could they be provoked. However, just the name of heaven-crushing alliance was already offensive in and of itself. Moreover, the power of Genesis tier saints was intricately linked to the regulations of heaven and earth. Thus, this was more the reason that they shouldn't go about defying the heavens. Ling Han was astonished. If they were a few lowly thieves, he would still understand. After all, those who were ignorant knew no fear. Thus, it was possible that they would found forces such as the heaven-crushing sect, heaven-crushing faction, and whatnot. However, even a heaven demon had joined such an organization. This was truly a rare sight. Ouyang Taishan smiled as he continued to stroll forward, saying, "Young man, are you aware of how one can enter the celestial realm? Fuse the regulations of the two realms and blast open the passageway to the celestial realm," Ling Han replied. Ouyang Taishan nodded upon hearing this. This sounds simple, but up until now, not a single person has managed to succeed. This is because it's impossible to fuse the regulations of the two realms. Ling Han was slightly taken aback. Hadn't he succeeded in fusing them? Or was he able to fuse them so easily because he hadn't reached the Genesis tier yet? Perhaps this fusion would fall apart once he advanced to the next major tier? You're an exception, so that's why I've come to personally visit you, Ouyang Taishan added. So that's how it is, I'm an exception. Hang on, that can't be right. Empress Luan Xing has also fused the regulations of the two realms. Only the heavenly phoenix divine maiden hasn't managed to do so. She can only replace the regulations of the immortal realm with the regulations of the netherworld. She can't fuse them together no matter how I explain. Perhaps this is because the Empress possesses a divine fetus. Ling Han didn't speak. It was evident that Ouyang Taishan hadn't come to merely take a look at him. Thus, all he needed to do was remain silent and listen. "Young man, I'll let you in on a secret." Ouyang Taishan suddenly changed the topic, and said, "A long time ago it's already impossible to determine when exactly the netherworld and immortal realm were actually a single realm." What? Ling Han's eyes widened in shock. This was truly an explosive piece of news. The netherworld and immortal realm were a single realm? Oh, that's right. Small Tower has also said before that the celestial realm isn't transcendent above the immortal realm. Rather, it's just another part of the immortal realm. It's just a little more special. Moreover, the regulations are complete in the celestial realm, and there's no notion of power of creation or power of destruction. Could it be that the immortal realm was split into three at that time, one being the celestial realm, which preserved its original state but became much smaller? Then, the remaining sections split into two and became the immortal realm and the netherworld. However, this was a destructive division that not only split the land, but also split the regulations. That realm was called the Ancient Realm, Ouyang Taishan continued. In the Ancient Realm, the celestial realm was regarded as a special place where only those who reached the level of the great saint or earth demon were allowed to enter. There existed an undying divine essence there, and this was something that could continually aid one's cultivation. In turn, it could help them obtain a lifespan that was as long as the heavens. One day, however, a great turmoil suddenly gripped the celestial realm. Or perhaps it was the ancient realm that was subject to an enormous transformation first. It was split into the immortal realm and netherworld, and this in turn affected the existence of the celestial realm. You also know that the celestial realm experienced great turmoil at that time. Countless forces were massacred, and only a rare few people managed to escape. Some were also banished from the celestial realm, and they lost the right to obtain eternal life. Right now, the ancient realm exists as two separate realms, with the regulation of each in stark opposition to the other. This has also birthed division between the Genesis tier elites, who are now separated into demon masters and saints. At the same time, This has also stripped anyone of the right from entering the celestial realm. If we want to change this, there's only one possible option. A passionate glimmer suddenly appeared in Ouyang Taishan's eyes, and he said, "We need to fuse the netherworld and immortal realm and recreate the ancient realm." What a lofty aspiration. What a lofty goal. Ling Han was stunned. So this was the true aim of the heaven-crushing alliance. They didn't desire to battle heaven and earth, but they instead desired to shatter the barrier that existed between the two opposing kinds of heaven and earth. They wanted to recombine the two opposing realms. However, is this possible? As if reading Ling Han's mind, Ouyang Taishan said, "These two realms were originally a single entity. Thus, it's naturally possible to fuse them back together. In reality, the two realm passageways that you see are the products of the instinct of the ancient realm. It wants to fuse the two realms back together again. So this is the true purpose of the two realm passageways? This wasn't caused by the conflict between the two realms, but is rather a product of the two realms wanting to fuse together. Through this method, it wants the two realms to interact with each other, and eventually recombine to form the ancient realm. However, this process requires tens of billions of years, perhaps even trillions of years," the old heaven demon continued. "Initially, we had no choice but to wait. Although we can help it along a little, the effects aren't especially great. However, your appearance has changed everything. You can become a core and fuse the regulations of the two realms. By doing so, you can increase the speed of fusion of the two realms exponentially." Ouyang Taishan wore a solemn expression as he gazed at Ling Han, and he said, "Right now, I'm officially inviting you to join the heaven-crushing alliance. As long as you accept, you can immediately become the 17th elder of the alliance. I can also promise you that we'll do everything in our ability to raise you." Gasp. Go Li sucked in a sharp breath upon hearing this. 17th elder. What kind of glory was this? Just how powerful were the 16 current elders of the heaven-crushing alliance? They were all heaven demons and saint kings. Moreover, they had all reached the pinnacle stage of these levels. In addition, there was no notion of rank among these 16 elders. Thus, even though Ling Han would be the 17th elder, his power and influence wouldn't be weaker than that of the senior elder, second elder, 9th elder, or any of the other elders. Even those who had just broken through to the level of heaven demon or saint king didn't have the right to become an elder, yet such a position was now being offered to a measly cultivator at the medium extreme of the eternal river tier. How could Go Li not be stunned? However, who told Ling Han to possess such an extraordinary ability? Only he could fuse together the regulations of the two realms. Ling Han pondered for a moment before asking, "Dare I ask, Senior, who else is in the heaven-crushing alliance?" Judging by his description, this was a supreme organization that spanned across the two realms. Sure enough, a force as powerful as the 8 Stones Forbidden Land was also involved in this grand plan. In any case, there were 8 forbidden lands from each of the Netherworld and Immortal Realm. However, the Dongchang Forbidden Land of the Tan clan wasn't one of them. Old geezer Tan is a bit cowardly, and is afraid that interfering with the fusion of the two realms will result in punishment from the heavens, Ouyang Taishan said, a look of disdain on his face. In his eyes, there was no greater aspiration than trying to enter the celestial realm. Moreover, if they didn't enter the celestial realm, their only fate would be dying of old age. As such, they were better off taking this gamble. However, not all of the forbidden lands agreed with this reasoning. Fusing the two realms? In their eyes, this was a completely impossible task. Thus, they preferred to look for other means. However, up until now, neither of the two sides had found any way to enter the celestial realm. Ling Han pondered for a moment before shaking his head, and replying, "There's some animosity between me and 8 Stones Forbidden Land." Ouyang Taishan faltered upon hearing this, and there was a strange expression on his face as he looked at Ling Han. "You're really quite the troublemaker, aren't you?" Chapter 1574 Small Tower Wakes Up. 1574 Small Tower Wakes Up. Go Li was also speechless. However, being able to offend 2 forbidden lands, not missing out either the Netherworld or the Immortal Realm at that, was also a kind of capability. More importantly, Ling Han managed to enter the netherworld alive when he had offended the 8 stones forbidden land. This was even more awesome. Hiss, this guy couldn't have come to the netherworld to seek refuge, right? Go Li thought further, and couldn't help but feel even more stunned. You could even comprehend the regulations of the netherworld whilst being a fuck refugee, and merge them with the regulations of the immortal realm. This was practically enough to make anyone burn with jealousy. Meanwhile, Ouyang Taishan hummed deeply. The 8 stones forbidden land was one of the most powerful forces of the immortal realm, especially the Grand Elder of the 8 stones forbidden land, who was both naturally talented and diligent. He definitely could be ranked among the top 10 in the immortal realm. Even Ouyang Taishan did not dare be careless or overlook such a mighty figure. What more guarantee with complete confidence that the latter would definitely listen to his advice, and resolve the animosity between him and Ling Han. Tell me first, what enmity exists between the two of you, he asked. Ling Han did not conceal anything, and related the grudge between himself and the 8 stones forbidden land, causing Ouyang Taishan to frown involuntarily. This was a little intractable. I will ask an old friend of mine from the immortal realm to lobby your cause, and I believe that old who will look at the big picture, Ouyang Taishan said. He had that kind of confidence because he thought that the Hu clan's grand elders longing to enter into the celestial realm was more important than everything else. If they could enter into the celestial realm, it would mean that everyone had hopes of becoming a deity and attaining unlimited lifespan. In comparison, the deaths of a few clansmen would be a paltry matter. Those who would have major accomplishments would not bother about the minor details. Young man, I will seek you out again after some time. Additionally, I will also have to pay a visit to the Tan clan to ensure that they would behave themselves. Ouyang Taishan nodded, and spread out a golden pathway. Grabbing Go Li, he left. You left just like that. Then what about me? Ling Han couldn't help but be speechless. Now, everyone had left, but he could not use the Black Tower. The cloud-piercing shuttle was also inside, so what was he to do? Traveling right across the galaxy? He indeed did not have to worry about dying of thirst or starvation, but the speed would be too slow. Even if he ran all the way to see Space Planet, it would take an unknown amount of time. Forget it, he'd better just wait for Small Tower to recover. Ling Han sat down cross-legged. He had spent the major part of these 3 years on comprehending formations, and had accumulated a great amount of experience, which he could sort out. This would be of great help to his learning of saint-level formations in future. The higher the cultivation level, the harder it would be to battle surpassing one's cultivation level, especially for the Genesis tier. The inhibition that a great saint had on a medium saint, and a medium saint had on a small saint was practically so huge that it was impossible to reverse. At the bottom of things, it was mainly due to the fact that all who could reach this step were king tiers, and had cultivated to pinnacle level at some cultivation level or another before. Thus, even if there was still the difference between ranks 1, 2, and 3, unless everyone's cultivation level was the same, it would be extremely difficult for this kind of advantage to be reflected. If he wanted to maintain tier-surpassing battle prowess at the Genesis tier, then he would have to make good use of the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and formations were the best weapon for him, for they would fully exploit the unique trait of sturdiness of his physique. He sat there for 10 days and 10 nights. It was not him that wanted to end his meditation after that, but rather that Small Tower had finally woken up. Brat, have you gotten the Chaos Source Rock? Small Tower asked. Its voice was very weak, it was clear that it had not fully recovered. Take it. Ling Han did not tease it. It looked like Small Tower was really very seriously weakened this time round. Very good. Small Tower put the Chaos Source Rock away, and then ignored Ling Han completely. Hey, you ungrateful stupid Small Tower, you are obviously kicking me to the curb when I'm no longer useful. Ling Han called out, but Small Tower completely did not look like it had any intention of responding to him. In any case, now that the Black Tower had reopened, he was not in a rush to leave. Instead, he entered into the Black Tower, and made an inventory of the gains that he had received in Ocean Dragon Mountain with the Empress and the Heavenly Phoenix Maiden. Additionally, he also wanted to inform the 2 women about the Heaven-Crushing Alliance. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden still did not manage to merge the regulations of the 2 realms. It was useless no matter how much time she spent underneath the reincarnation tree. The heaven-crushing alliance, no, all the forbidden lands should know how to return to the celestial realm, but not one person succeeded in these countless years, which clearly shows that taking this step is incredibly difficult, Linghan said after a moment of thought. You and I being able to merge the regulations of the two realms should be a special case. His last words were directed at the Empress. Previously, Jiyu Dawi was filled with confidence, certain that he definitely could return to the celestial realm. His confidence probably came from the fact that he had formed a divine fetus. Otherwise, what need was there for him to waste 9 lifetimes in the immortal realm? Could it be that he could not form the divine fetus of his 10th life in the celestial realm? It was not that he could not, but rather that he had absolutely no way to return to the celestial realm in his previous 9 lives. Are you going to agree? The Empress asked. Linghan nodded, and said, I would not mind. Everyone should have the right to climb the highest peak of the path of cultivation, and no one can take that right away. The Empress smiled softly. In truth, she actually did not care about all life in this world. What business was it of hers? But since Linghan said this was what he wanted, then she would use her full efforts to assist Linghan. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden, meanwhile, was very depressed. Even if she had gained the inheritance of the 3 phoenix kings, there was still a massive gulf existing between her and Linghan and the Empress. Feng'er, come give me a kiss. Linghan couldn't help but tease her when he saw her despondency. Go to hell. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden rolled her eyes at him. Yet the Empress stretched over and planted a light kiss on the corner of Linghan's lips, as if she was comforting him. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden thought for a moment, and also came closer and kissed him. The Empress, being as enchanting as she was still very gentle and doted on this bad guy. If she still acted very unruly, she would probably be banished into the cold court. Linghan laughed loudly, one arm wrapped around the Empress while his other wrapped around the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and planted a heavy kiss on the beautiful lips of the 2 women respectively. Then, he drew out the saint fruit and began to cook. It could not be left uncooked. The medicinal effects of the saintly medicine were too violent, and directly ingesting it would be a straight path to death. Even Linghan was no exception, and cooking it in the Black Tower would allow him to draw on the power of the Black Tower to suppress it, and there would also be no waste of the slightest bit of medicinal effects. They shared it amongst themselves, but the heavenly phoenix divine maiden could not eat very much at all. She only drank a little soup, and immediately began refining it beneath the reincarnation tree. Linghan and the Empress, meanwhile, shared the whole fruit, and divine red clouds surged from both of them. Multiple seals glowed all over their bodies, shining incredibly brightly. They had to refine the effects as soon as possible. 3 days later, Linghan's and the Empress's cultivation level advanced greatly. However, they were both in the Eternal River tier. If they had broken through to the Genesis tier, then wanting to improve their cultivation level by a single star would probably need more than 10 such saintly medicines. The use of the saintly medicine actually is not increasing cultivation, but there are shards of great Tao within which are to be comprehended by saints. Or those who have suffered Tao injuries would use the saintly medicine to heal themselves, the Empress said smilingly. From the Genesis tier onwards, wanting to increase cultivation basically can only depend on cultivating earnestly. In the case of saintly medicine, that would really be too much of a waste, because you would need a huge volume. A huge volume it is. I want to enter into the celestial realm as soon as possible, Linghan said. His parents, lovers, and son were all in the celestial realm. He had not seen them for more than 100 years, and missed them very much. All right, then we will snatch them over in future, the Empress said uncaringly. As long as it was what Linghan wanted, so what if he wanted to pierce a hole in the heavens itself? Chapter 1575, Creating a New Pill Recipe. 1575, Creating a New Pill Recipe. Linghan and his group rode the cloud-piercing shuttle, and returned to Sea Space Planet. They had not even rested when they saw Wu Ju had sought them out. He pounced straight at the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, and the result was naturally him being picked up by Linghan by the scruff of his neck and thrown out. You damn guy, you've gone too far. The little bottom's expression was one filled with grievance. Che, you wanted to embrace my wife, and claim that I've gone too far? Ling Han laughed. Your thoughts are too filthy. I only missed sister too much, the little bottom exclaimed angrily. Just give up the thought, it's not possible. Ling Han shook his head. Wu Ju was about to say something else when he suddenly discovered Empress Luan Xing. His eyes couldn't help but pop, his mouth half gaping, showing an incredibly stunned expression. Immediately, he scampered over to her, and said, Sister, my name is Wu Ju, what's your name? The Empress was proud, and didn't even cast a look at him. Yet, this completely stirred up the little bottom's true nature, and he wanted even more to worship her. Don't think about this one, either, it's still my wife. Ling Han wrapped an arm around the Empress's slender waist, and her austere expression washed away as she smiled sweetly at him. Ah! The little bottom pounded the ground tragically. In his heart, the heavenly phoenix maiden who was both sister and mother to him was this guy's wife, and the exquisite beauty that had just caused his heart to throb, and ignited the seeds of love in him was also this guy's wife. Why was it that all the good women of this world were all taken by this bastard? Mo Li walked over, and patted the little bottom's head. Then, she said to Ling Han, when you fought me previously, you have not gone all out. She was slightly displeased. As a king tier, she hated it when people took it easy on her. Ling Han smiled, and said, that is my ultimate move. If I use it, it would mean that either I or my enemy would die. In a spa, it is not suitable to use it. Only then was Mo Li appeased. She nodded. When I am stronger, I will seek you out for another spa. Tan Mo's appearance allowed her to see that she was far from reaching the limits of the Eternal River tier. Before breaking through to the Genesis tier, she still had a very wide space for improvement. All right, Ling Han replied casually. Mo Li brought the little bottom away with her, while Ling Han, the Empress, and the heavenly phoenix maiden settled down, and took some time to enjoy some delicious food. Cultivation was not the only thing in life. One should still take the chance to enjoy themselves when one could. A few days later, Ling Han suddenly felt like he was being watched, but no matter how hard he searched, he could not find the source of this feeling, which was a little strange to him. However, there was a demon master standing by here, and he was a big shot among yellow demons at that. There were not many people that were qualified to come here to commit crime. Ling Han thought for a moment, and then put the matter aside. He had a more important matter he had to deal with at present. Creating a new pill recipe. The alchemical pills that he possessed now did not really suit his needs. Though they could increase the accumulation of origin power, it was much, much too slow, and there was too little saintly medicine. Waiting for the reincarnation tree to bear fruit would be even slower. Furthermore, the number of fruit would be limited. In truth, the saintly medicine's main use was to increase the comprehension of great Tao, and not the accumulation of origin power. To the majority of cultivators, this was rather the easiest part to be resolved. On the other hand, merely increasing one's origin power, and neglecting the comprehension of cultivation level would be like a child brandishing a supremely powerful divine sword. Not only would he be unable to control the divine sword, he would hurt himself instead. This would be just like one's cultivation level not having increased, and the space was limited, yet he was still insisting on stuffing in a huge volume of origin power, and the only result would be stuffing himself to the point of bursting. But Ling Han was different. His comprehension ability was extremely high in the first place, and he also had the reincarnation tree, so he could drink reincarnation tree. What he needed was the accumulation of origin power. Because this was too unique, aside from some specific divine fruits, such as the red clear fish fruit, there was no alchemical pill that would have that kind of effect. It was too impractical. Their ancestors didn't even bother to study this field, and even if they did get some result from their studies, it would be poison to others. Perhaps the celestial realm had this kind of pill recipe, but because the ancient realm had broken up, this recipe had long since been lost in the passage of time. Thus Ling Han wanted to create this kind of alchemical pill. Previously, he had grasped the pharmacology of all the medicinal ingredients. In theory, anyone would be able to create a pill recipe as long as he had enough time to delve into the field. Furthermore, he was the alchemy emperor, and he also had something nature-defying like the reincarnation tree. Ling Han went into seclusion to create something out of nothing, and come up with a new pill recipe. This was a challenge, but for an alchemy emperor who had grasped all pharmacology, this was not a dilemma that had no solution. Time passed quietly, and already a year had flown by. Ling Han was still working hard on brainstorming about the new pill recipe in the Black Tower. Occasionally, he would come out and spar with either Mo Li or the Empress. He would not simply focus on alchemy and neglect his martial arts. He already had a model in mind, but he had not completely confirmed it. There were still a lot of details that he had to examine. However, he only planned to have himself and the Empress ingest this alchemical pill. Thus, he was also dealing with it, keeping their special conditions in mind, so he could ignore some things, such as the violent nature of the medicinal effects. Their physiques were astonishingly strong, and belonged to the category that would not easily get sick because of bad food. Thus, it was fine even if the medicinal effects were a little violent. There was no need to worry about this aspect. Every time Ling Han moved around outside, he would always feel like he was being stared at. The farther he was from the chaotic demon palace, the stronger this feeling would be. It was like someone wanted to take the chance to make a move on him, but because he was not sure of his chances, he continued to stay in hiding. Could it be Hu Feng? After this thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, he shook his head. Firstly, he was already in the netherworld, and according to reason, Hu Feng should not be able to predict his whereabouts any longer, and secondly, if Hu Feng was here, he was practically like an ultra-bright pillar of light in the netherworld, lighting up whatever place he was at, so how could there possibly be no hint of anything unusual? Or could it be someone from the Tan clan? Ouyang Taishan had gone off to play the role of mediator, and warn off this forbidden land from acting recklessly. Perhaps, they might have appeared to have agreed, but secretly sent out assassins. As long as they could do things cleanly, who would be able to accuse them of having killed him? Ling Han smirked internally. If anyone dared jump out and make trouble for him, as long as he reached the Genesis tier, he would use the power boost from the Black Tower, and directly kill them. Fuck, did they really think that he was a pushover? A few days later, a golden pathway stretched out from the galaxy. Ouyang Taishan had arrived. He had a conversation with Ling Han, and told him that he had resolved most of his problems. He was only waiting for him to agree, and he would be able to join the heaven-crushing alliance. However, because Ling Han's present cultivation level was a little low, the powerful figures in the alliance did not agree to give him the position of 17th Elder. What those old guys mean is for you to first enter into the Green River Valley and cultivate, and when you reach the Genesis tier, they will promote you to an Elder, Ouyang Taishan explained. Ling Han was not surprised. He was only in the Eternal River tier. If those genuine big shots really agreed for him to become an Elder, that would be the real surprise. That would be too embarrassing for them. He asked, "Senior, what is the Green River Valley?" "Oh, it is a mystery realm that our few forbidden lands have worked together to open up. It is especially used to nurture the younger generation in hopes of having more Genesis tiers appear so that they would be of help in future," Ouyang Taishan stated calmly. They could nurture even Genesis tiers. Chapter 1576, Green River Valley. Chapter 1576, Green River Valley. Ouyang Taishan talked to Ling Han about the matters concerning the Green River Valley. This was a sacred land for cultivation that the 8 forbidden lands of the Netherworld had worked together to create, and poured all the efforts of the 8 clans into. The cultivation resources were naturally astonishingly many, and additionally, there would also be high-grade demon masters providing teachings and clearing doubts. There was even inheritance of celestial techniques, so it was amazingly awesome. Originally, things like techniques would not be easily taught to outsiders, but because they could not see any hope of returning to the celestial realm after such a long time, these forbidden lands also softened their policy and broke the old rules, conducting a deeper exchange of cultivation. Of course, the celestial techniques that touched upon their core, such as the Tide of the Ages, would definitely not be taught. Additionally, there was also a similar place in the immortal realm, and it was called the Peace Palace. There were not only the prodigies of the 8 forbidden lands inside the Green River Valley. They would also bring some promising saplings in as well. On the most important premise of returning to the celestial realm, a great many people had relaxed the rules of their clans. Of course, this also drew the dissatisfaction of some of the more conservative parties, but now the mainstream culture was being open-minded. Furthermore, there were also prodigies of the immortal realm inside the Green River Valley. Nurturing them to the Genesis tier was not the motive. What the heaven-crushing alliance truly wanted was still those who could merge the regulations of the two realms. Thus, some prodigies of the immortal realm went there to attempt merging the regulations of the two realms, and on the other side, the Netherworld would also send some of their geniuses to the Peace Palace. Unfortunately, no one had succeeded so far. Ling Han only considered it for a short while, and then made the decision to go to the Green River Valley. Now that the Black Tower could be used again, he also had 1 to 3 chances for a power boost, so Ling Han was filled with confidence. Worst come to worst, he would flip the whole Green River Valley over, bring it on. Ling Han had once asked if such super geniuses like Mo Li could be brought to the Green River Valley as well, but Ouyang Taishan shook his head and said she was not qualified enough. Even Mo Li was not qualified enough. Ling Han finally felt shocked. Just what kind of freaks were there in the Green River Valley? The golden pathway spread out, and Ouyang Taishan brought Ling Han off with him. Only when he had left did Sea Space Planet recover its original ambience. Previously, a heaven demon had arrived, causing everyone to feel a coldness from fear and trepidation. After they left, the figure of a young man suddenly appeared out of nowhere, a strong killing intent in his gaze. Hu Feng. However, the present Hu Feng was no longer the Hu Feng who had just entered into the Netherworld, and no longer was the pillar of light that surged to the skies. Instead, he had completely fitted in with the surroundings of the Netherworld. He was no longer a saint, but was rather a demon master. Ling Han, no matter where you run to, I will kill you. The Celestial King technique and celestial tool that you have are all mine. He also rode a golden pathway, and with a flash, his figure disappeared. There was not much time left for him anymore. Once Ling Han advanced by another minor level, the heavenly tribulation would completely sever the link of karma that he had on him, and though Hu Feng had grasped the regulations of the Netherworld, and once more possessed the power of the Genesis tier, his ability of prediction was still 0. He needed even more time to grasp more regulations of the Netherworld. At present, it only allowed him to have a preliminary grasp of the battle prowess of the Genesis tier. In truth, it was far from the battle prowess he had had in the immortal realm. The Green River Valley was very far, and even a demon master would have to take close to 3 months' time to reach it. It was not on any planet, but was rather a small world that had been directly set up in the middle of the galaxy. When it did not appear, even the eternal river tiers would not be able to discover its presence, and one would need power on the level of Heaven Demon to open it, so its security level was very high. Ouyang Taishan opened the mystery realm, and brought Ling Han in. This was indeed a valley, and there was a very long river flowing in it. From high above, it was verdant and dark green, and that was because there was a unique plant in the river that caused the river's waters to take on this kind of color. Ninth Elder. They had just entered when they saw 2 people flying towards them. These 2 people were exuding a very strong aura. They were 2 demon masters, and though their abilities were inferior to Ouyang Taishan's, they were still indeed very strong. Ouyang Taishan nodded, and then said, "This is Ling Han. Take him to handle the procedures." Understood. These 2 demon masters nodded respectfully. In front of a heaven demon, other demon masters were merely ants, and they were not allowed to be disrespectful. Ouyang Taishan turned around and left. As the grand and noble 9th Elder, an elite at the top tier of the Netherworld, how could he possibly waste time on trifling matters? It was already quite extravagant to delegate such a task to 2 demon masters. I am Yi Chengjong. Zheng Jing. These 2 demon masters introduced themselves. We are teachers who take turns to be on duty here. In future, if you have some questions in the area of cultivation, you may ask us for help. In these 100 years, it will be us who would be standing by here. Ling Han nodded and said, "Greetings, Senior Yi, Senior Zheng." The 2 demon masters nodded slightly, and were very pleased with Ling Han's attitude. Previously, they naturally had heard that there was a young guy that was going to become the 17th Elder. If Ling Han really took on the position, even they would have to respectfully address him as 17th Elder. This would depress them to the point of internal injury. At present, all the big shots had temporarily suppressed this proposal, and the attitude that Ling Han showed was one filled with respect. This naturally caused their impression of Ling Han to considerably improve. Come, we will first arrange your accommodations. This mystery realm was very big, but its size was all in that wide green-colored river in the middle of the valley. Their accommodations were actually on the steep cliffs of either side of the valley. Multiple stone chambers had been built, and it did have a unique charm to it. However, it was reasonable that this place could become a sacred place for cultivation. The green river surged, exuding boundless spiritual qi, and there were also seals of great Tao interwoven within. Listening to the river and watching its waves would allow one to attain appreciation of great Tao. Even Genesis tears would be able to benefit from being here. What more eternal river tears? After the two demon masters arranged his accommodations, they departed. They did remind him, though, that it was allowed for disciples to bring their wives here on the condition that they could not cause any disturbance to others. Ling Han allowed the heavenly phoenix divine maiden and the empress to come out. They all expressed shock at the cultivation environment in this place, but it was still far from being a match for the Black Tower. Did this place have a reincarnation tree? Even in the celestial realm, this was a supreme treasure. Small Tower also gave Ling Han a piece of good news. After refining that massive chaos source rock, the restoration of the Black Tower had advanced a large step further, and very soon, the reincarnation tree could be improved to a whole new level. Now, one day was equivalent to a year, and in the future, it could reach the extent of a day being equivalent to 10 years. Ling Han was pleased, naturally, but this had still not reached the true standard of the reincarnation tree. It should be known that when he'd first drunk the reincarnation tree, he had experienced a whole reincarnation. How many years would one day be equivalent then at the time? It was good news as long as there was improvement. As long as the Black Tower was fully restored, there would definitely come a day when the reincarnation tree would display its true effects entirely. The heavenly phoenix divine maiden was more willing to cultivate in the Black Tower, and the Empress's advantage showed itself here. She had her 9 doppelgangers continue cultivating, while her main body accompanied Ling Han and began a tour of this valley. So you are Ling Han? They had just stepped out of the stone chamber when they were stopped in their path by 5 people, all of them being giants among men. Chapter 1577, Becoming a Target Again. Chapter 1577, Becoming a Target Again. Ling Han looked at the 5 of them with a smile, and replied, "That's right. I am Ling Han. Do you all have some business with me?" "Ho ho, nothing much. We just wanted to see what right a guy who is merely in the medium extreme of the eternal river tier has to become an elder," a young man retorted smilingly, yet there was a clear disdain in his tone. He wore a black-plated armor which had spikes protruding from it, appearing very sinister. He was an eternal river tier, but his aura's strength had far surpassed an ordinary person in the consummate level of the eternal river tier. It seemed like he only had to blow out lightly, and he would be able to kill a few hundred to more than 1,000 people in the consummate level of the eternal river tier with his mere breath. His strength far surpassed that of Mo Li, Zhu Bie, and the others. He was definitely capable of being on equal level with Tan Mo, pinnacle level of the eternal river tier, and it was possible that he had formed as many as 2 million stars. Ling Han couldn't help but nod internally. As expected of a prodigy that had walked out from a forbidden land, he was indeed amazing. Furthermore, Ouyang Taishan had said previously that Mo Li was not qualified enough to come here, and there was indeed some logic to his words. Merely this person was enough to overwhelm her, who knew how many times over. "Thankfully, you did not actually become one, or it would be a humongous joke." Another person laughed raucously. His aura was not in the slightest bit inferior to that of the young man in the plated armor from before. Deep disdain for Ling Han was clearly written all over his face. "Just scram quickly." A third young man did not smile, but his whole expression was cold. "You are completely unworthy of standing on equal level with us. This is practically dragging down our overall level." The remaining 2 merely crossed their arms over their chests, looking completely at ease and carefree, as if they were there just to watch the excitement. A bunch of smelly bugs. The Empress was furious. She pointed at the 5 of them, her face filled with menacing killing intent. They actually dared to insult her Ling Han. The 5 of them took one look at the Empress, and couldn't help but look stunned. Even if they were prodigies of the current generation, so what? In front of the Empress's charms, they were still like little boys that had just had their first contact with the affairs of the heart, completely at a loss what to do. There was actually such an exquisitely beautiful woman in this world. Not only was she beautiful, she also had a noble bearing, as if whatever she said was right, others would willingly submit and obey her. This clearly was not something prodigies should do, yet the 5 of them did not want to free themselves, and were willing to bow at the feet of the Empress. Even if they could only kiss her shoes, they would have deemed having lived their life's worth. However, king tears were king tears, after all. The 5 of them forcibly withdrew their uncontrollable hearts, and didn't even dare take another look at the Empress, fearing that they would completely fall for her. How about this? We will not make things difficult for you. As long as you can take 3 moves from me, we will not chase you out. As long as you crawl between our legs, we will allow you to stay here, the first young man in plated armor said. Ling Han's eyes involuntarily turned cold. He knew that when one entered a new place, there would definitely be the phenomenon of bullying new people. However, hearing the words of this young man, he was still slightly angered. You all should die. The Empress was the first to fly into a rage, and moved to attack the 5 of them. Boom, her abilities were outstanding in the first place, and added with the fact that she had merged the regulations of 2 realms at present, she had reached the peak of the medium extreme of the Eternal River tier. Her battle prowess was really extremely powerful, and she would even prove to be a match for the peak of the consummate level. What was unfortunate was the 5 of them had also cultivated to the pinnacle level, and it was not the ordinary pinnacle level, either. They possessed more than 2 million stars, and could be considered big shots even among big shots. In a one-on-one battle, the Empress could not possibly win, what more when it was 1 against 5 now. Thankfully, the 5 of them were protective of the fairer sex, and only dodged her attacks and did not fight back. Otherwise, the Empress would very likely be suppressed with a single move. Wife, ignore them, Ling Han said, smiling. The Empress stopped, and cast a proud, disdainful eye over the 5 of them. Only then did she slowly return, and when she arrived by Ling Han's side, she immediately became cute and seemingly helpless, as gentle as water. The eyes of the armored young man and the others all became bloodshot with envy. What part of them was inferior to Ling Han? Yet why was such an exquisite beauty disdainful of even casting a second look at them? Ling Han looked at the 5 of them, and said, if you're itching to be beaten, I can teach you guys a lesson. However, I don't have that kind of free time now. Go on and wash yourselves clean, and 3 years later, I will definitely thrash your behinds. This. The 5 of them were furious. You are a little too arrogant, aren't you? Want to make a move? Ling Han scoffed. Don't think that I don't know the rules. If you guys force me into a spar just because your cultivation levels are higher, you will have to suffer serious punishment. Their expressions stiffened. They had rushed so quickly over because they wanted to bully Ling Han while he was still unaware of the rules here, and threaten him a bit. If they scared him too badly, Ling Han would become completely humiliated. How would he be able to take the position of elder in the future then? But they had not thought that Ling Han would actually be so slippery, being familiar with the rules even when he had just barely arrived. Don't stand in the way and be an irritant. Don't tell me that you guys have cultivated so much that you don't even know how to be human anymore, and want to be dogs instead. Ling Han said coldly. The 5 of them exchanged a look, yet they slowly cleared the path, allowing Ling Han and the Empress to leave. They watched the figures of Ling Han and the Empress disappear into the distance, expressions of fury on their faces. Are we going to let him go just like that? Then we will become a joke. It's all right. 2 years later will be the ranking competition that is held every 10 years. We will each make a request of our respective seniors to arrange for us to be in that brats group. There will definitely be at least one among us who will come up against him. Haha, at that time, I will definitely make him wail and weep in despair. A mere Eternal River tier, who is an outsider at the same time, actually wants to have a share of the treasures that have been passed down by our ancestors? What wishful thinking. The 5 of them all smirked coldly. The Green River Valley was very big, and the river flowed continuously as if there was no end to it. Even Ling Han and the Empress walked close to 10 days to finally reach a place where there was no further path ahead of them. In this place, the Green River surged into empty space, and there was no way to take one step further ahead of them. This was a small world, a mystery realm, and not the real world. Let's go back. The two of them returned to their stone chamber. Soon, someone came and gave them a spatial ring. The cultivation resources that Ling Han would need for 1 year were contained within. This was really generous. It was practically as if high-grade alchemical pills were completely free. It was enough to make anyone below Genesis tier go crazy. Yet Ling Han did not care too much. He gave all these alchemical pills to the heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, while he himself continued to study a new alchemical pill. He was already close to succeeding. He only had to successfully concoct an alchemical pill that could increase his origin power, and Empress Luanxing's and his cultivation level would see a booming advance. Time passed, one day after another. A year later, Small Tower had completed the upgrade to the reincarnation tree, so meditating 1 day under the tree would now allow one to spend as much as 10 years' time. This was really much too important for Ling Han. A mere 3 days later, he had already created a brand new pill recipe. He began to attempt concoction. Because he knew pharmacology like the back of his hand, and was also inside the Black Tower, he succeeded at this first attempt. However, though the alchemical pill had indeed been successfully concocted, its effects were not completely up to his expectations. It is really too far from my needs. What exactly am I missing here? Ling Han went into deep thought, and pondered furiously on how he could improve the alchemical pill beneath the reincarnation tree. Chapter 1578, 27 Killing Formations. Chapter 1578, 27 Killing Formations. Ling Han continuously improved on the pill recipe. A brand new pill recipe had to undergo innumerable adjustments from the start to perfect completion. Another half-year later, Ling Han broke into a smile. He had found a point of breakthrough, and greatly improved the medicinal effects. When a new furnace of alchemical pills was concocted, he shared it with the Empress. Woo! Not too long after ingesting the alchemical pills, there were fiery flames surging from both of their bodies. That was because the medicinal effects were too violent, and had taken on the form of flames. Thankfully, both their physiques far surpassed ordinary Eternal River tier. Ling Han's physique was close to matching Genesis tier, while the Empress had also formed a divine fetus, and any attacks she suffered could even be distributed among her 9 doppelgangers. It was the same for the medicinal effects. Thus, both of them could bear it, but these medicinal effects were still incredibly violent, causing blood to seep from all their apertures, and they looked very terrible. However, the effect was truly obvious. The Empress already possessed enough comprehension of cultivation level, so when her accumulation of origin power reached the required level, she immediately broke through. The heavenly tribulation came in waves, and she went to the end of the Green River Valley. This was the place for those who needed to endure a heavenly tribulation. Meanwhile, the effect on Ling Han was slightly inferior, but he took another alchemical pill. Ah! He yelled in agony. Even if his physique was amazingly strong, and his godly bones were even close to reaching the level of saintly material, his blood and flesh were slightly inferior, after all. Under the barrage of the medicinal effects, his blood vessels ruptured, and his heart and other internal organs had all sustained severe injury. Feels great. He inhaled sharply, and gritted his teeth. The origin power in his body was bubbling, directly surging towards the peak of the medium extreme. He comprehended great Tao beneath the reincarnation tree, and after a mere 10 days, he jumped up and exited the Black Tower. The heavenly tribulation came as expected. The Empress had long since endured her heavenly tribulation, and was waiting for him inside the stone chamber. As a powerful aura enshrouded her, it was as if she was truly a supreme empress with incomparable grace, filling one with bone-deep love for her, yet absolutely not daring to commit sacrilege. "Wait for me." Ling Han threw out these words, and hurriedly ran out. The heavenly tribulation would wait for no man. His figure sped away rapidly, and he covered more than 1,000 miles in one breath. Then, boom! The first flash of lightning fell on him. This was still very far from the end of the Green River Valley, but there was already no one staying on either side of the valley. Thus, he could rest assured and endure the heavenly tribulation without worry. He took the initiative to shatter his godly bones to be tempered under the heavenly tribulation. His enduring the heavenly tribulation was merely going through the motions. His main purpose was to strengthen his godly bones. Additionally, he also drew out the divine demon's sword to be further tempered by the heavenly tribulation. Though this celestial tool had already advanced to the saint tier, there would be no drawbacks from being tempered by a heavenly tribulation, either. Half a day later, even the heaven and earth could only withdraw their might as they could do nothing to Ling Han. Ling Han channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid. He sensed the strength of his godly bones, and broke into a grin. The strength of his godly bones had not advanced into the saint tier, and this was within his expectations. However, compared to before, they had become much stronger, and this would grant him the ability to inscribe even more limitless 9 deaths formations on his godly bones. If desired, an eternal river tier could not advance into the saint tier, yet could endlessly form stars, and far surpass the consummate level of the eternal river tier in terms of power, and completely suppress the latter. They could be considered another type of demon master or saint. Ling Han, too, could do the same now. However, his present cultivation level was still far from the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier, yet his godly bones were strong enough that he could inscribe a few dozen top-grade killing formations, and would be able to kill anyone below the saint tier. He returned to the stone chamber, and immediately began preparing to inscribe the limitless 9 deaths formation on his godly bones. This was the strongest killing formation beneath saint level, and Ling Han presently was unable to grasp saint level formations, so this was his best choice. Previously, he could inscribe 11 killing formations, and now, he could inscribe 27 killing formations. This was too frightening. With a mere thought from Ling Han, a frightening killing intent flowed out of the tips of his fingers, forming a ray of light that was only an inch long and looked like a sword. This was because his path of martial arts was more inclined towards sword Dao, so the might of the formation would be manifested in this form. With this strike, Tan Mo would definitely be unable to bear it. Ling Han had exchanged blows with Tan Mo before. Though he had only managed to kill the latter by depending on the divine demon sword showing its might, he was still considerably familiar with Tan Mo's abilities. If he was to battle again with Tan Mo now, he could use the 27 killing formations in a head-on confrontation with the latter. Furthermore, he could guarantee that it would be Tan Mo who would be dying in the end. The destructive power of the killing formations was naturally the strongest. However, if it was he who would be countering this move, he would not choose a head-on confrontation. After all, his cultivation level was still in the high extreme of the eternal river tier. Against the pinnacle level, this was a glaring shortcoming. Thankfully, his physique was too strong. If someone at the pinnacle level of the eternal river tier wanted to wound him, it would still be extremely difficult. The sharpest sword and strongest shield were both in his possession, so who could be a match for him? At least, I have absolutely no need to fear anyone who isn't a freak that has formed 3 million stars, he murmured. But even a freak with 2,500,000 stars had appeared, so if a freak with more than 3 million stars appeared, it would not be something that difficult to accept, either. In this Green River Valley, is there someone like that? Ling Han was slightly curious. This question of his was soon answered because he received a notification. 3 months later, all the disciples would undergo a martial arts competition. Everyone had to take part, and could not refuse for any reason whatsoever. I still have 3 months. I don't know if I can improve further, Ling Han mumbled. Both he and the Empress were furiously taking alchemical pills. In truth, the Empress had more of an advantage than he did. In terms of the ability to bear medicinal effects, it was definitely Ling Han who was more superior, but one would soon become immune no matter what kind of medicine he took as long as he took a large amount of it. Yet the Empress had 9 doppelgangers, and they could ingest alchemical pills in turn, so there was practically no reduction of the effects at all. 3 months' time was enough for her to improve further, and advance into the middle stage of the high extreme, but in Ling Han's case, this time would extend to more than a year's time. This was actually not too bad, either. The Empress was getting closer and closer to the Genesis tier, and he would soon be able to push her down, Ling Han couldn't help but rub his hands together. Just thinking of what kind of positions they could use when the time came was enough to make him feel a nosebleed coming on. He began to study the celestial techniques he had in his possession. Correct. He not only had one, but several. Previously, he had gotten 2 celestial techniques from the Hu clan. One was the Great Evolution technique, which was used to temper origin power. A similar amount of power blasted out, but because the origin power was more condensed, the battle prowess would naturally be stronger. The other was Darkness of the Paramount Night. After cultivating it, one could set up a completely dark environment, causing all those who were within to lose their 5 senses. This was a little like how he had gone to meet with the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire all those years ago, but it was clear that the Heavenly Emperor of Thunder and Fire should be more powerful. The latter was at least a being of the severing mundane, or perhaps even slightly higher than that. The third was the Flying Dragon Shadow Hands. He could confirm that this technique that had come from the Ocean Dragon Mountain was indeed a celestial technique. Others would probably be smiling in their sleep if they had managed to obtain a single celestial technique, yet he had a total of 3. Which one should I learn first? How distressing, he muttered, playing it up to the extreme. Underneath the reincarnation tree, Ling Han comprehended a celestial technique. 1 day was equivalent to 10 years, and 3 months were equivalent to close to 1,000 years of cultivation. With his comprehension ability, how could it be that he would not be able to reach at least small accomplishment level? Time passed swiftly, and 3 months had passed. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, a smile appearing on his lips. He had been here for 2 years, and had yet to exchange blows with the king tiers and prodigies here. He was really getting an itch for it. Chapter 1579, Issuing a Challenge in Public. Chapter 1579, Issuing a Challenge in Public. Ling Han's advancement through the cultivation levels was actually very fast, but he could not be compared to the Empress. The latter had already reached the middle stage of the high extreme, and was advancing towards the late stage at present. The gap between the two of them would only expand, and would not shrink. In the area of taking alchemical pills, the 9 doppelgangers formed through the 9 Deaths Heaven art were really too useful. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden received a large volume of cultivation resources, and added with the assistance of the reincarnation tree, her advancement was also extremely amazing. She had directly streaked to the consummate level of the heavenly body tier. Now, she was completely engrossed in cultivation, not even willing to have babies with Ling Han. Her whole day was spent cultivating, and she was even crazier about it than Ling Han. This was also because she had been provoked. Who asked Ling Han and the Empress to cultivate and improve so rapidly? Furthermore, his other women were already in the celestial realm, and who knew, they might already be in the Genesis tier by now. How could she possibly dare to neglect her own cultivation? It would not be a pleasant feeling to be the weakest among all of them. Ling Han did not try dissuading her, either. He and the Empress had exited the stone chamber, and arrived at the platform above the valley. Masses had gathered. Today was a big day. Even though only 8 forbidden lands had formed the heaven-crushing alliance together, there were truly many people gathered here, about more than 100. Every single one of them was definitely a supreme prodigy, and there were none below the Eternal River tier. Without reaching this level, they would ordinarily still be cultivating in their own clans. They would only be qualified to enter this place after at least reaching this level. However, even Eternal River tiers could not be considered the strongest in this place, because there were actually as many as 4 demon masters, 3 men and 1 woman, respectively. They all possessed an intimidating bearing. Ling Han nodded. Since it was possible for a prodigy like Hu Feng to walk out of the 8 stones forbidden land, why was it impossible for the other forbidden lands? Ling Han shockingly discovered that 3 of these 4 demon masters did not even cast a single look at him, but one of the men stared at him for a while, his eyes filled with malice. Strange, he had definitely never met this person before. Humph, Ling Han, you have come to be humiliated today. A young man jumped out. It was one of the 5 people that had stood in Ling Han's path 2 years ago. He was still wearing that black-plated armor. It should be a treasured armor, and that was why he wore it constantly. Ling Han swept an eye over him. It had only been 2 years, and this person had indeed improved slightly, but it would definitely not be too large an improvement when one had reached this kind of level. Forming an additional or even 10 additional stars was only a negligible improvement. However, if someone in the low extreme of the Eternal River tier formed an additional star, that would be a massive improvement. Have you washed yourself clean? He bared his teeth in a grin. The young man in plated armor couldn't help his expression from darkening. You haven't forgotten it. You are really a guy with a vicious tongue. Don't drop to his level. In any case, we will definitely make him suffer later, someone beside him advised. Though it was visible that Ling Han had improved and advanced into the high extreme, they still did not take him seriously at all. What a joke! Even if he were in the consummate level, so what? How was he supposed to fight an opponent in the pinnacle level if he himself was not in the pinnacle level? Ling Han looked back at that demon master. This person's skin was darker, and he had very ordinary features. He belonged to the category of people that would be completely overlooked in a crowd, but as he had advanced into the Genesis tier, he naturally had an overbearing air that could intimidate the world and compel others' submission. Who is this guy? The others were all discussing spiritedly. Unexpectedly, this demon master was not a clansman from any clan of the 16 Forbidden Lands, but was rather a sapling that had been unexpectedly discovered and had only been taken into this place a year ago. Jiyu Feng. This person's name is Jiyu Feng. Never heard of him. Such a young demon master, his talent is really nature-defying. He can be considered a match for Ouyang He, Leng Xiaoran, and Go Hai. Previously, there were 3 big shots, and now it will be 4 big shots. Everyone discussed fiercely. There would definitely be some who would know the origins of the 4th demon master, but even if they talked, it was pointless. Aside from a name, this person was incredibly mysterious, and the information that they were aware of was considerably limited. Wang, a golden pathway stretched over, and a demon master appeared. He was a black demon. Otherwise, he would not be able to suppress those disciples that were at the yellow demon level. Begin drawing lots, and commence the competition, this black demon said. His name was Liu Gan, and he was one of the persons in charge here. This was an old rule, so everyone walked out and began drawing lots. However, Jiyu Feng and the other demon masters were exceptions. If they were to compete with the others, it would be too unfair. Ling Han. Liu Gan spoke up, and when he saw that Ling Han had stopped, he said, "You do not have to take part in the competition. You only have to watch from the sidelines." What? The young man in plated armor and the others from before all had dazed expressions. They had already asked the seniors of their clans to make some secret arrangements so that they would be able to draw Ling Han as much as possible. They did not think that Liu Gan would directly come out with an unexpected move like this. Ling Han actually didn't have to participate in the competition. Why is it that he can choose not to participate in the competition? Someone immediately questioned. Though it was a black demon in front of them, they were not all that afraid of him. With their talent, it was a sure bet that they, too, would one day become demon masters themselves, and there was a chance for them to even become an earth demon or heaven demon. Liu Gan swept a glance over these people, and calmly stated, "If I say he doesn't have to, then he doesn't have to. Do you all have an objection?" Ling Han's mission was to increase his cultivation level. As long as he advanced into the Genesis tier, he would be able to become a core in the 2-realm passageway, continuously merging the regulations of the 2 realms, and endlessly speeding up the merging of the 2 worlds. Thus, the strength of his battle prowess was not important at all, so what reason was there for him to compete? He could just sit on the sidelines as a mere spectator. If he could attain some kind of enlightenment, that would be even better. We do not accept. Some people were clearly troublemakers. Because their talent was too high, they had been treated like princes and princesses in their respective clans, and were used to being self-centered. Yet now, there was actually someone that was placed above them and more special than they were. How could they accept that? Humph, if you all have an objection, you can go ahead and talk it out with the ancestors of your own clans because this was their decision. Liu Gan waved a hand, forcibly suppressing everyone's dissatisfaction. Ling Han was also slightly surprised. He had been planning to use this opportunity to teach a well-deserved lesson to the young man in plated armor and his group, and they actually did not allow him to make a move. But since it was a black demon that had spoken up, it would not be proper for him to object, either. He nodded, and stood on the sidelines as a spectator. Then he'd just be a spectator first, and see what heights these members of the younger generation from the Forbidden Lands had reached, and how many of them were more powerful than Tan Mo. He sat together with the Empress, and could see the gazes of envy that others directed at them. Whether male or female, they would all be enchanted by the Empress's supreme grace and bearing. However, the gazes directed at Ling Han were filled with disdain. 4 king tiers, those that shrank back from battle, were naturally disgraceful. The battles began, commencing one after another. Ling Han couldn't help but nod internally. There were at least 17 people here that had reached Tan Mo's level, and some were even stronger than him. Perhaps they really had formed more than 3 million stars. After about 5 days, the battles finally ended. Aside from 4 Demon Master level disciples, the top 3 were Zhong Ting, Yi Quan, and Liu Dang. The young man in plated armor was named Zheng Mo, and ranked in 10th place. He was also considerably powerful. He was definitely not weaker than Tan Mo. Ling Han, do you dare battle with me? I conceal my own cultivation level, so my cultivation level would descend to be the same as yours. Zheng Mo suddenly leaped out, pointing directly at Ling Han. Issuing a challenge in public, would you accept or not? If you did not dare to accept a challenge to a battle between equals, then how would you have the face to see others in future? Chapter 1580, Then We'll Battle. Chapter 1580, Then We'll Battle. Are you afraid to accept the challenge? Zheng Mo continued to provoke Ling Han. He spread out his own silvery river, and it could be clearly seen that most of the stars within had dimmed, and there were merely 10,000 stars that were still exuding blazing light. 10,000 stars was the standard of someone who had just broken through to the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. This would be a relatively fair battle because what determined the battle prowess of a cultivator was not merely power, but also regulations. Thus, though Zheng Mo had sealed his power, he was still at the height of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier in terms of regulations. The other prodigies smirked coldly. If you did not have the courage to accept even a battle like this, would you still be qualified to call yourself a king tier? Liu Gan, meanwhile, showed a sliver of displeasure in his expression. He had already said that Ling Han did not have to take part in the competition, yet Zheng Mo still wanted to challenge Ling Han, and this naturally caused his displeasure. This was a challenge to his authority. However, the competition had been held just now, and he said that Ling Han did not have to participate, and he indeed had not. But it was a different situation now. This was a challenge. Even he did not have the right to stop them. Only the person involved was allowed to make his own decision whether to accept the challenge or otherwise. You could refuse, and the challenger could not make an aggressive move, but in that way, the one who had been challenged would be humiliated and become the target of public scorn and derision. Fearing to fight even in a relatively fair battle? We'd look down on you. Ling Han smiled faintly. He was just wanting to give this guy a beating. He had not imagined that the latter would actually deliver himself right up to his doorstep. Very good. He patted the Empress's delicate hand so that she would not be angry while he stood up. If you want a battle, then we'll battle. Zheng Mo was overjoyed. In his eyes, his chances were naturally mostly assured. Ling Han was merely in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, and even if he sealed off his own power, the height of his regulations was still there, and that would be the consummate level, completely overwhelming and suppressing the high extreme. Haha, I will let you have the first 10 moves, he said, purposely seeming very generous. All right. Ling Han was indifferent. With a leap, he shot out a punch at Zheng Mo. Since Zheng Mo had already announced that he would let Ling Han have the first 10 moves, he would naturally not break his own word in public. He crossed his arms in front of his own chest, planning to take this strike from Ling Han head-on. Peng! Ling Han's punch arrived, and with a burst of power, it blasted out towards Zheng Mo. Light shot to the skies. When the power had completely dispersed, Zheng Mo was still standing proudly. He had cultivated to the pinnacle level at the Mountain River tier, Sun Moon tier, and Heavenly Body tier. Thus, even in a battle of equals, his power would not be inferior to Ling Han's, either, and added with the fact that he could overwhelm the latter in terms of regulations, his battle prowess had far surpassed Ling Han's. Yet, he gritted his teeth slightly. This was a solid attack that was delivered at close quarters, causing even his bones to tremble slightly. He felt discomfort through his internal organs, and felt an urge to throw up. Fuck, it seemed like this guy's physique was extremely amazing. It would not be advisable to battle at close range with this person. The impact of a solid hit was too strong on his body. Ling Han shot out another punch. Zheng Mo had absolutely no wish to have a physical battle with Ling Han, but since he already said that he would let Ling Han have the first 10 moves, then he could either block or dodge these 10 blows, but would he have the nerve to dodge? He had bragged too much just now. If he dodged now, what would happen to his pride? He could only grit his teeth, and exchange blows with Ling Han again. Peng, their two fists crashed into each other, and in the wave of power that resulted, it seemed like even the space around them was about to be torn open, which was incredibly frightening. This was a battle at the level of the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. Furthermore, they were two king tiers whose battle prowess had directly soared to the consummate level, so it was naturally incredibly terrifying. Zheng Mo did not shrink back in the slightest, and still appeared very much at ease, yet only he himself was aware that the impact of this punch caused even his bones to hum, and he had still not recovered even by now. It was as if they would soon shatter into a few hundred pieces. What a piece of trash. In a battle of equal cultivation level, he was already allowed to have the first 10 moves, and he is still not unable to get an advantage. Around them, some people were beginning to mock and ridicule Ling Han. Previously, they had practically not met Ling Han before, yet had heard of his name because it was rumored that Ling Han was to take the position of the 17th Elder, which naturally made them displeased. What right did an outsider, and a person who was so much weaker than them, have to be placed higher than all of them? This battle was clear proof that he was practically a piece of trash. Humph, who knows what desolate corner he has crawled out of. He actually deludes himself into thinking of being in a higher position than all of us. What wishful thinking. Then we will allow him to understand through this battle that a piece of trash will always be a piece of trash. No matter how much he is flattered, he will still be dirt. Ha ha ha, then just let Zheng Mo teach him a good lesson. Ling Han naturally would not take these words to heart. He charged out a third time, and still shot out a punch. It was a simple, direct, and rough move. Peng, peng, peng. Ling Han shot out 7 punches consecutively, and Zheng Mo took these 7 blows head-on, showing no weakness. He was like an unmovable boulder, as firm as a mountain. In the eyes of spectators, it was naturally Zheng Mo who had full control of the situation. He only had to take the last 3 punches, and that would be the time for him to counterattack. It could be imagined that with his power, defeating Ling Han would be a piece of cake for him. Yet, Zheng Mo felt like he was about to cry. The bones in his arms were really close to their limit. There were already web-like cracks on them, and if it were not for the fact that his power was strong, and he had forcibly condensed his origin power in his arms, they would have broken a long time ago. But if he continued to forcibly hold on like this, how many more punches would he be able to endure? 3 punches. Seemed like they were so far away. Ling Han smiled softly, and comforted him. Hold on for a while longer, there are only 3 more punches left. Fuck you. Zheng Mo gritted his teeth, and declared, after 3 moves, I will let you know what are the results of provoking me. Yi, weren't you the one who challenged me? Ling Han pretended to be surprised. He raised his right fist, and shot out another punch without any hesitation. Peng, peng. After another 2 punches, Zheng Mo finally couldn't help but show a sliver of pain through his expression. This kind of close-range exchange of blows was something that all elites would be wary of because they would also have to sustain the full power of the backlash in a situation in which the power of both parties was about the same. However strong the power you blasted out, you would in truth also have to sustain as much on your own side. Aside from those that concentrated on cultivating their physiques, no one's bones would be too sturdy. Even if it was a demon master, he would not be able to hold up to such attacks, what more he. The last move. Ling Han rushed out, his figure speeding up, becoming a flash of lightning. He drew out his right fist, and seemed like a divine dragon that was riding the winds. Boom. Zheng Mo gritted his teeth, and still chose to confront Ling Han head-on. His pride would not allow him to shrink back at this time. This naturally was still a situation in which neither was at a clear advantage. In terms of power, the two of them were about the same, but subsequently, Zheng Mo unexpectedly did not begin his counterattack. Da. Blood was dripping from his fingertips. What? Seeing this scene, everyone exclaimed in surprise. Their expressions were filled with disbelief. They couldn't accept this outcome no matter how hard they tried. Why had Zheng Mo suddenly been injured? Look. Someone pointed at Zheng Mo's arm. Gasp. Everyone inhaled sharply, and could see that Zheng Mo's right arm had swollen so much that it was thicker than his thigh, and they could clearly see that it had become misshapen, and was covered with traces of blood. This was clearly his bones having been shattered into shards, and having pierced through his skin. Only then did they know that every single time when Zheng Mo received a punch from Ling Han, he had to pay a very heavy price. His bones could not hold up to the impact, and with the accumulated damage from 10 punches, it finally formed a qualitative change, causing all the bones in his arm to shatter. Multiple surprised gazes were directed at Ling Han. Even the 3 demon masters Leng Xiaoran, Ouyang He, and Go Hai were no exception. Jiyu Feng, on the other hand, lowered his eyes, seemingly thinking deeply of something unknown. Chapter 1581, Clash of Celestial Techniques. Chapter 1581, Clash of Celestial Techniques. Ling Han smiled faintly and asked, "Still want to fight?" "Yes." Zheng Mo gritted his teeth. He had only broken one right arm, and though this would affect his battle prowess, he did not need to give Ling Han any more handicaps. After drawing out the distance between them, he could use all his techniques. How could it be that he would still be unable to win with that? "Come." Ling Han crooked a finger. "Humph." Zheng Mo raised his left hand. Wang, a divine light enshrouded him. His face was filled with seriousness, and he suddenly pressed his hand down on Ling Han. Heavenly clouds piercing mountain hand. Boom. The giant hand descended, and there were regulations of great Tao entwined around it. It was as if the heavens themselves were raging, and a hand of divine retribution descended, planning to erase everything in this world. Ling Han nodded internally. The other party's power was not inferior to his, and in terms of regulations, his level was higher. Furthermore, he was using some kind of secret technique now, which pushed this man's battle prowess to a very high level. He was truly very strong. However, how could it be that he did not have a stronger technique? Ling Han flicked a finger, and a flash of sword light surged out. Immediately, it transformed into innumerable flashes of sword light, sweeping out towards that giant hand at an extraordinarily fast speed. Lightning sword technique. Now that he had merged the regulations of 2 realms, the might of the lightning sword technique had also improved to a new level because this was not just the regulations of 1 realm, but the regulations of 2 realms. Creation and destruction formed a cycle, as if it was world creation. He couldn't help but feel enlightened. In truth, neither the present demon masters nor saints were the Genesis tier in the true meaning of the word, because the Genesis tier meant simultaneously including the 2 source regulations of both creation and destruction. Shua, Shua, Shua. Sword chi swept out towards the 9 heavens unhindered. The present lightning sword technique was incredible. It was based on speed, and had merged with the power of heavenly tribulation, added with tide of the ages. Furthermore, it was Ling Han's own creation. If he was the one using it, its might would naturally be maximized. The large hand that Zheng Mo had pressed down with was instantly torn apart. When it arrived, it had actually lost all its might long ago. Not even a corner of Ling Han's robes had been lifted. So powerful. All the king tiers also raised their brows slightly. No matter how much they looked down on Ling Han, they had no choice but to acknowledge Ling Han's abilities when they were faced with such a scene. Though it was claimed to be a battle of equal cultivation levels, Zheng Mo actually had a very big advantage. In terms of regulations, he was at the advantage, and even if one of his arms were broken now, his advantage should still be overwhelming, but they were both equal with this one strike. This was too shocking. A hint of seriousness finally appeared on Zheng Mo's face. Previously, even if his arm had broken, he was still confident, and thought that Ling Han only had a slightly stronger physique. But now, he withdrew this kind of underestimation. In a battle of equals, this was a strong enemy, an opponent that could even defeat him. This made him very defiant. As a top-grade king tier and a supreme prodigy, he would not allow himself to lose to anyone in a battle of equals. His eyes shone, and multiple streaks of energy rose up from his body, turning into a mist that entwined around him. Boom! His aura suddenly burst further. It was clearly that only 10,000 stars were shining, yet his power seemed to have suddenly risen to a new level. The unique celestial technique of the Zheng clan, Mist technique. Not only can it greatly increase one's battle prowess, it will turn into a mist that will surround you that none can penetrate. I never thought that his trump card would be forced out so quickly. There is no other option. From the start of the battle, Zheng Mo has not had the upper hand at all. He would be too embarrassed. If it was any other person, he would also feel shame. With a battle cry, Zheng Mo suddenly charged towards Ling Han. With a tremble of his hands, he shot out 2 streaks of bright red clouds that turned into 2 divine spears that rapidly flew towards Ling Han, poised to stab him. There were multiple divine patterns entwined around the spears, and the light of great Tao was flickering on them. This strike was clearly stronger than the attack before. Ling Han nodded internally, but he was not afraid in the slightest. Competing with him in celestial techniques? Come, let's see who has more celestial techniques. Boom! Endless darkness surged out of his body, and instantly enshrouded everything. The darkness of the paramount night, a celestial technique that he had used about 1,000 years to learn through these 3 months. Being enshrouded by complete darkness, everything had vanished. Nothing could be seen, touched, or heard. It was as if the whole world had vanished from existence, or he himself no longer existed. Yi, why can't I see through this kind of darkness? Someone exclaimed in surprise. That was an eternal river tier pinnacle level elite. Though he had only formed over 1 million stars, and his power was considered the weakest among all the king tiers, he was much stronger than Ling Han, yet he actually could not see through this darkness. What was going on here? Everyone looked here and there, and then their eyes focused on Zhong Ting, Yi Quan, and Liu Dang. They were the only 3 freaks out of all of them that had formed 3 million stars, but these 3 people all shook their heads with grave expressions. Hiss, even they could not see through it. Everyone turned their eyes away and turned to look at the 3 demon master-level prodigies Ouyang He, Leng Xiaoran, and Go Hai. As for Ji Yu Feng, they were not familiar with him, so it would naturally not be suitable for them to direct their queries at him. Ouyang He was the most approachable of them, and he said, "This should be a celestial technique that can block the senses. If one's cultivation level is equal to his, you will be influenced. It is only a matter of whether the influence will be more or less. Only if one surpasses him in terms of a major tier will they be capable of being completely unaffected." What he implied was that demon masters would not be affected by Ling Han, but as long as Ling Han advanced into the Genesis tier, then even heaven demons would be affected, though the effect would not be very strong. This ant actually could use a celestial technique. Could it be that he was not a country bumpkin, but had originated from some forbidden land himself? In the darkness, Zheng Mo did not move recklessly. He realized that his vision, hearing, and divine sense had been confined to a very small range. He was in the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, after all, so though the darkness of the paramount night could affect him, it could not possibly completely block his senses. But he did not even know where Ling Han was, so how was he supposed to defeat Ling Han? Ling Han grinned, and stretched out his right hand to grab out at Zheng Mo. Flying Dragon Shadow Hands, another celestial technique. Boom, his right hand formed a golden dragon's paw that was incredibly and extraordinarily fast. Otherwise, how could it be called Flying Shadow? It was so fast that even a cultivator of the same cultivation level would only be able to catch sight of a flying shadow. Zheng Mo's expression changed drastically. In the darkness of the paramount night, his reaction would be considerably slower than usual in the first place, yet such a fast attack was actually directed at him, so he was naturally in a sorry state. Again, Ling Han grinned. His right hand was still channeling the Flying Dragon Shadow Hands, while his left hand was using the lightning sword technique. This, too, was a technique focused on speed. It should be known that the Tide of the Ages was also embedded in the lightning sword technique, and these were 4 celestial techniques. Just ask the whole netherworld now, who else could use 4 celestial techniques at the same time? Even if they could learn 4 celestial techniques, who would be capable of using all 4 of them at the same time? Only Ling Han could. Of course, the Empress would definitely be more powerful in the future because she had 9 doppelgangers. Theoretically, she could also use 10 celestial techniques simultaneously, and the mere thought of that would terrify others. Zhang Mo was tiring from continuously parrying the incoming attacks. He was endlessly hit, and as multiple flashes of power streaked over him, they left behind one wound after another on him. If it was not for the fact that he still had a black-plated armor which was indestructible, it would not be only his limbs and face being injured. Ah! He released a roar of rage, and suddenly blew out a breath with all his might, which actually blew away all the darkness by force. Stars shone resplendently as more than 2 million of them shone at the same time. In the end, he had still broken his word, and channeled the power of all his stars. Actually claw, but it can mean a whole hand with claws in Chinese too. I doubt his 5 fingers turned into 1 claw, hence paw. Chapter 1582, Killed till a mental breakdown. Chapter 1582, Killed till a mental breakdown. Everyone was rendered speechless. Previously, they could not see anything because of the darkness, but now that the darkness had dispersed, they could see that Zhang Mo was covered in injuries. They could imagine how terrible his situation had been at the time. If it was them in his place, would they also be forced to use their full power? Most probably, yes. This was the instinctive reaction of a cultivator. Zhang Mo's expression was livid. After a slight hesitation, he brazenly made a move, grabbing out at Ling Han. Since he was already compelled to use his full strength, then so be it. Why not take this opportunity to simply defeat Ling Han? Humph. Ling Han's gaze turned cold. If Zhang Mo had kept his word and maintained a battle of equals, then even if he lost, Ling Han would still feel a sliver of respect for him, but he wanted to bully Ling Han just because of having a superior cultivation level. Then he'd just suffer the consequences of his own actions. Wang, the 27 killing formations in his body activated at the same time. Ling Han's whole body was exuding a terrifying aura. He raised his right hand, and there was only an inch-long ray of light extending from his fingertip, but anyone who saw it would feel their hearts and souls tremble, anxious and ill at ease. At first, Zhang Mo had already reached him, but he forcibly halted his dash, and looked like he had seen a ghost. He stared at the light on Ling Han's hand, his expression shifting. What is that? Ultimate invincible, severing the heaven, destroying the earth, slaughter all, Ling Han replied with a serious face. Zhang Mo was not a fool, and immediately realized that Ling Han was messing with him. He couldn't help but humph, and said, having a glib tongue is useless. In front of absolute power, you will only be crushed. Ling Han involuntarily smiled. Then, why don't you make your move? Though Zhang Mo's words were filled with disdain, he did not dare be careless in the slightest. Though that was only a ray of light, he felt as if he could see an ancient beast inside Ling Han's body. If it rushed out, it would be able to destroy everything. His expression was filled with seriousness. At this time, he had an incredible advantage in power, which he had to make good use of. He threw out a punch at Ling Han from a distance, and the frightening power took the form of innumerable gusts of energy. He did not use any technique, and was merely using his superior power to overwhelm him. This was a very smart way to fight. Power that was strong enough could break all techniques. Ling Han charged out. When the bursts of energy reached him, his whole body emitted light, and easily sliced all the attacking bursts of energy into pieces. He was completely unhindered, and continued to charge towards Zhang Mo as if no technique could touch him. Zhang Mo's hair stood on ends in his fear. He could clearly feel how powerful that force inside of Ling Han was, but his words had already gone too far. Furthermore, he was already using his full battle prowess, so how could he have the nerve to dodge? Gritting his teeth, he shot out his left hand in response to Ling Han's attack. Hong, the power of his fist surged out. He was still alert, unwilling to exchange blows with Ling Han at close range. Ling Han barged through it directly. The killing formations showed their might, and there was no way to stop him at all as he directly approached Zheng Mo. Peng! 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 Zheng Mo had no choice but to exchange blows with Ling Han. He only managed to force Ling Han back after throwing out 3 successive punches. When he looked at his raised hand, he could see that his left hand had become badly mangled. The killing formations were too frightening. Even if he had used origin power to wrap around his fist, it was useless. His hand had still suffered many injuries. Everyone was also stunned. Now, Zheng Mo's right arm had been broken, and though his left arm had not been broken, it was not all that better off, either. It could be claimed that he could not be any more defeated than this. Ling Han had clearly not used any kind of precious tool. The strength of this outsider was too shocking. Even a pinnacle-level king tier that had formed 2 million stars would pale in comparison. Probably only king tiers that formed more than 3 million stars would be qualified to match him, which also meant that Ling Han had become an absolute big shot among the Eternal River tiers, and could be an equal for Zhong Ting, Yi Quan, and Liu Dang. Only Genesis tiers would be able to defeat them. But the problem here was that Ling Han was only in the high extreme. If he advanced into the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, just how strong would he be then? Would he be able to match a demon master? Ling Han did not spare Zheng Mo even though he had the advantage now. He had not trifled with or offended anyone, so what right did they have to keep targeting him? He had a temper too, all right? Peng, 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 peng. His punches fell like rain, and as the killing formation circulated, it was as if he was an Ashura demon king from hell, his murderous aura soaring sky-high. Zheng Mo was unwilling to admit defeat. If he publicly admitted that he was no match for someone in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier, what pride would he have left to face others? This resulted in increasingly more and more injuries on his body, and also the increasing seriousness of his wounds. Finally, he had no choice but to activate that plated armor, which formed a protective shield around him. Only then did he manage to block Ling Han's attack. This was a demonic tool, and was one of the precious treasures and family heirlooms of the Zheng clan. Because he was too outstanding, it had been bestowed on him. It could only be used for defense, and would save his life in a crisis. He was only one step away from the Genesis tier, so he could more or less completely activate this plated armor. At least, power below Demon Master level would not be able to penetrate it. A balance of power finally emerged in their battle because Ling Han's defenses were practically invincible among the Eternal River tier, so neither of them could wound the other. But everyone knew that Zheng Mo had lost, and lost very terribly at Thaith was using his full battle prowess, and had even used his demonic tool, yet that only led to a tie. Stop. Liu Gan could not bear watching, either. Wasn't this just being shameless? He moved and separated Ling Han and Zheng Mo with a palm strike, as if he had drawn out 2 worlds. This was the strength of a black demon. All of you need to work hard. The few who are ranked the lowest have to take note. If you place last 3 times in succession, you will have to leave this place. Liu Gan's eyes swept over them, causing a few people to pale. If they were expelled from the Green River Valley, that would be a great humiliation. Everyone left respectively. The competition here was really too fierce, and no one dared relax. This place was filled with top-notch king tiers, and whoever slacked off in the slightest would only be surpassed by others. Ling Han had completely exposed his strength in this battle, and made everyone remember him. However, the most outstanding rookie this time was still Ji Yufeng. Though he had not moved at all, his cultivation level was still there for all to see. He was a genuine young big shot, a being that had a chance of becoming a heaven demon in future. Of course, Empress Luan Xing also won everyone's attention. The men admired her, while the women were filled with mad envy. Ling Han and the Empress returned to their stone chamber. He had seen his own shortcomings in this battle. He was still not strong enough to sweep aside all opposition in the Eternal River tier. This was something that he could do nothing about. In this place, everyone was a top-rate king tier, and it would be difficult to defeat them even in a battle of equals, What more when he had to surpass a gap of a minor level? If it was not because Ling Han had cultivated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll, and had incredibly strong godly bones which allowed him to inscribe so many killing formations, he, too, would have to adhere to the ironclad rule of cultivation, and yield in front of these king tiers. They continued to cultivate. The Empress's cultivation level was practically growing boomingly. She had 10 doppelgangers which could simultaneously ingest alchemical pills and comprehend Tao underneath the reincarnation tree. The frightening power of the 9 Deaths Heaven art was on full display, with nothing reserved. Ling Han also taught celestial techniques like the Tide of the Ages, Great Evolution Technique, and Darkness of the Paramount Night to the Empress. He believed that when she, too, advanced into the pinnacle level of the Eternal River tier, her battle prowess would definitely be capable of suppressing big shots. With a Celestial King technique as her base, how could she not be awesome? Time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, another year had passed. The Empress had reached the peak of the high extreme, and was about to break through to the consummate level. Meanwhile, Ling Han had just barely advanced another step, and reached the middle stage of the high extreme. And it was at this time that a major event happened in the Heaven-Crushing Alliance. A new forbidden land had joined them. The Dongchang Forbidden Land, Tan Clan. Chapter 1583, The Tan Clan Makes Trouble. Chapter 1583, The Tan Clan Makes Trouble. The Tan Clan actually joined the Heaven-Crushing Alliance. Wasn't it said that the Grand Elder of the Tan Clan was afraid of getting into trouble, and worried that forcibly interfering in the evolution of heaven and earth would result in divine punishment, and a heavenly tribulation would descend and erase them directly? Why did they suddenly now want to join the Heaven-Crushing Alliance? When Ling Han found out, he couldn't help but smirk coldly. The Tan Clan had come for him. They knew that he had a Celestial King technique, so how could they be willing to give it up? But he had already gone to Green River Valley. There was no way that the Tan Clan would dare to attack the Green River Valley by force, right? Thus, they chose to join the Heaven-Crushing Alliance, and then they naturally would be able to send their own people in. As long as their people could enter, they would have a chance to move. It was impossible that Ling Han would continue to close himself up in the Green River Valley, right? Then, once he left, they would be able to target him and find a chance to make a move on him. They really are troublesome pests. I haven't gone to seek you all out. Instead, you have come on your own. Ling Han smirked coldly. He had 1 to 3 times of power boosts from the Black Tower, so he did not mind using these chances on the Tan Clan. The Tan Clan joining the Heaven-Crushing Alliance did not cause much commotion. They arranged for a black demon to come here as a teacher. Additionally, they also sent in 3 clansmen, but none of them were as outstanding as Tan Mo. In fact, they were inferior to even Mo Li and Zhu Bie. In the Green River Valley, all the young king tiers were discussing spiritedly regarding the reason for drawing in a new forbidden land. This is for the sake of competing with the forbidden lands from the immortal realm, someone explained, seeming to know the truth. At first, with 8 forbidden lands of the immortal realm and 8 forbidden lands of the netherworld, we just reached a balance, and neither side has an absolute say, but our Grand Elders here clearly want to emerge superior over them, and have thus decided to draw in a new forbidden land. Furthermore, our netherworld has 8 forbidden lands in the first place, so a major decision would not be easily settled on. What if it was 4 against 4, so who should decide in that case? Now that there would be 5 against 4, there would definitely be one side that would be dominant. Even if it is just 1 additional forbidden land, the game of power that is involved here is extremely deep. In the first place, there were already 2 voices in the alliance. One wishes to draw in excellent saplings from the outside world, while the other objects and thinks that benefits should be kept among our own people. Furthermore, even if outsiders are married into the clan, it would also affect the purity of our bloodline. Now, there may be conflict between these 2 voices. Those that can decide are all the Grand Elders. We will just quietly watch on. After this happened, Ouyang Taishan had purposely come and sought out Ling Han. He told him to maintain as much of a low profile as possible and focus on cultivation. It was best that he did not leave the Green River Valley, thus avoiding any trouble from rising. Clearly, he, too, could tell the purpose of the Tan clan, but he was not the only person in the heaven-crushing alliance, so he could not expel the Tan clan. Ling Han sank into deep thought. For the sake of Ouyang Taishan, who had helped him before, he did not mind helping the former achieve his lifelong dream, and become a core himself to speed up the merging of the two realms. This was a great merit, and would also be greatly beneficial to him. But if there was someone in the heaven-crushing alliance targeting him, he would not be happy to do that. You guys were already planning to harm me, and I would be still dumbly working for you. I have to quickly advance into the Genesis tier. At that time, even if I cannot match a heaven demon or saint tier, the rest of the world would be enough for me to move unhindered, and I wouldn't have to depend on the Black Tower every single time. Ling Han affirmed his resolve, and did not bother with the disturbances going on outside, concentrating on his cultivation. Yet, the tree longed for peace, but the wind would never cease. He sat in his stone chamber. Today, the cultivation resources for the next year would be distributed. Though he had absolutely no use for them, they were precious treasures for the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. She already had 1 foot in the eternal river tier. But no matter how long he waited, no one came. A day passed, and still no one came to deliver anything. Ling Han did not take it to heart. In any case, 1 day of being late was not too serious. However, he still did not see anyone deliver anything to him on the 2nd and 3rd day. Naturally, he felt that there was something off, and when he went out and made some queries, he was instantly fuming mad. His cultivation resources had been docked by that black demon from the Tan clan. Such a brazen move, and the other powerful figures actually did not do anything. Ling Han couldn't help but think of the rumors that he had heard there were 2 voices in the heaven-crushing alliance. One was open-minded, while the other was conservative. At present, being open-minded was mainstream to draw in young talents. But the Tan clan had publicly docked his cultivation resources, and by now, not a single mighty figure had stepped out to voice objection. The significance of this action was something worth thinking about. The Conservative Party was about to gain the upper hand. Or rather, both parties were arguing about this matter at present. Once everything was settled, there could possibly be a drastic change in the heaven-crushing alliance. Ling Han was slightly confused. It was clear that he was the only candidate that had merged the regulations of the 2 realms, and even if it was the Conservative Party, they would take him into consideration first. After all, entering into the celestial realm was the major prerequisite that would surpass everything else in importance. That's right, some people want to get a cultivation technique from me, and think that the fact that I can merge the regulations of the 2 realms is not due to my own natural talent, but rather because I have cultivated a powerful celestial technique. Then, as long as they can snatch my technique, they naturally would be able to merge the regulations of the 2 realms. Ho, at present, they still do not have a united voice among themselves, so I can still sit peacefully here. It is only the vile characters from the Tan clan making trouble, but if there is only 1 voice left, it is possible that I will be in dire strait. A man does not keep himself in danger. I cannot base my own safety on the decisions of others. This place is not suitable to stay in any longer. Ling Han did not seek out that black demon of the Tan clan. Since he had docked his cultivation resources, seeking him out to argue with him would only be seeking his own humiliation. In any case, he had no need of them at all, and the heavenly phoenix divine maiden would not need them for the moment, either, so there was no rush. However, the Tan clan made a further provoking move. They actually splashed dog's blood on the doors to Ling Han's cave dwelling, and even wrote a great many insulting words, despising him to the utmost. Thankfully Little Black is not here, or your behinds would be bitten into 3 parts, Ling Han mumbled to himself. He still made no response, because he wanted to know what kind of attitude the heaven-crushing alliance was going to take. If someone stepped out and stood up for him, then he would still be willing to stay in this place. In the future, when the 2 realms were merged, this would also be a great merit. He was waiting for the heaven-crushing alliance to make their stand clear. This would decide what his next move would be. What disappointed Ling Han was that when a few juniors from the Tan clan provoked him in public, still no powerful figure stepped out to stop them. Ling Han, do you dare battle? I will only use 1 finger. A mere lowly commoner, an ant, and he actually dares to enter into the heaven-crushing alliance so shamelessly, P2e. 3 clansmen of the Tan clan threw out insults at Ling Han's cave dwelling practically every day. This naturally was witnessed by the other young king tiers, yet they all chose to sit by and watch. None of them were idiots. Till the end, none of the powerful figures had appeared, and this showed their attitude in this matter. Today, the 3 people of the Tan clan were still hurling insults outside, their words extremely rude and unpleasant. Who knew where such king tiers like them had learnt such crude curse words? Shua, a figure flashed past, and a few pa sounds rang out. The 3 members of the Tan clan were all sent flying with slaps, one side of their faces extremely swollen. Ling Han stood there, his hands crossed behind his back. He was about to commit bloodshed. Chapter 1584, One Word, Kill. Chapter 1584, One Word, Kill. The 3 members of the Tan clan all covered their faces, their expressions filled with shock. Ling Han actually came out, and even gave them each a hard slap. Actually, they felt that it was nothing strange for Ling Han to have come out. As long as he was not made out of clay, no one would be able to tolerate such insults. But Ling Han had sent all 3 of them flying with a single slap. This was something that they could not accept. He was just in the high extreme of the Eternal River tier. How could he be this powerful? You actually dared to attack. One of the clansmen from the Tan clan regained his senses, and harshly rebuked Ling Han. His name was Tan Bing, and he was already at the peak stage of the consummate level of the Eternal River tier, but he was still very far from breaking through to the pinnacle level. He did not dare believe this. He was a rank 3 king tier himself, and furthermore, his cultivation level was much higher than Ling Han, yet he was actually no match for the latter. Who asked you guys to insult me? Ling Han sneered. We had not broken any of the rules of this place, Tan Bing declared menacingly. They had only splashed a bit of dog's blood, and thrown out a few insults. There were definitely no rules in the Green River Valley that said that such actions would be punished. In truth, those that could enter into the Green River Valley were all king among kings, so who among the mighty figures here would have predicted that someone would actually do something so despicable? But Ling Han was a different story. Without getting the approval of others, he had immediately moved. Furthermore, he had dealt injury. This was a serious breach of the rules. The 3 members of the Tan clan actually had a very simple motive for doing this, and that was to anger Ling Han, causing him to do something that broke the rules. Then, the Conservative Party would be able to move and apprehend Ling Han, and did not need to care about those people from the open-minded party. Once he fell into their hands, what kind of secret could Ling Han still continue to keep? Those were almighty figures that stood at the apex of divine Tao. Searching his soul would merely be as easy as stretching out their hand. But by that time, Ling Han's secret would not possibly belong solely to the Tan clan, and definitely would have to be shared with the other forbidden lands. Though this was a small flaw, the Tan clan could not only get their revenge, but also obtain the Celestial King technique, so what else would they be dissatisfied about? Now, Ling Han had indeed been angered, and had also broken the rules. However, Tan Bing, too, had sustained a slap, which made him very furious. In his eyes, if Ling Han was unwilling to submit, and made an aggressive move, it should have been him that would personally take him down. The rules cannot be broken, you are destined to suffer the consequences of your own actions, Tan Bing exclaimed coldly. So what if you obtained momentary pleasure and gave me a slap? The price you would pay for this action was your very life. Ling Han smiled calmly, and said, You have not seen when I truly break the rules. However, you will be able to see it very soon. That's right, do you guys have any last words? He asked very generously. Ha 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 ha, do you really dare to kill us? Tan Bing laughed coldly, his expression was completely menacing. The other 2 members of the Tan clan stood next to him, also wearing cold smirks on their faces. What a real joke. Previously, they had only been caught off guard by Ling Han, and it was impossible that history would repeat itself now. Moreover, the mighty figures were not people to be trifled with, either. Since Ling Han had already made a move, it was definite that powerful figures of Black Demon level would appear, And by then, so what if Ling Han was a big shot among the disciples here? He would only be suppressed. Are those your last words? Ling Han shook his head, appearing to feel sorry for them. Around them, there were already a great many disciples watching the excitement, but none of them said a single word. Everyone was smart and knew that the matter this time around implicated the conflict between the two voices in the alliance. Though they might be prodigies, if they interfered, it was guaranteed that they would definitely be crushed into dust. Ling Han had moved to cause injury, and this could be either a very big issue or a very small issue. If the open-minded party had the upper hand, they would naturally be able to turn what would have been a big problem into a small problem, and a casual rebuke would settle the matter. But if it was the conservative party that had the advantage, what would have been a small issue would be magnified. Ling Han, you are too arrogant. Tan Bing smirked coldly. You are only an outsider, and just because a few grand elders have a high opinion of you, you refuse to adhere to the rules, and casually injure others. You are like this even now, so how much worse would you be when you became a demon master? Someone like you should be imprisoned and heavily punished. That's right, every clan has its rules, and every country has its laws. The three members of the Tan clan berated Ling Han continuously. By now, they naturally needed not to have any more reservations, and could just say whatever they liked. Ling Han did not say anything else. He drew out the divine demon sword. Haha, you are really committing rebellion. Tan Bing exclaimed balefully, yet took the initiative to attack Ling Han first. Standing out is not something so pleasant to do, Ling Han stated calmly, and suddenly charged, delivering a strike with his sword. Pu. A human head suddenly flew into the skies, and it was accompanied by a fountain of blood gushing forth. Peng, Tan Bing's headless body crumpled onto the ground, while his head showed an expression of absolute disbelief. However, his divine sense had no means of leaving his physical body, and having his vital point directly slashed by the divine demon sword, well, at least no one in the Eternal River tier would be able to survive that. He had died with remaining grievances. At that moment, everyone was stunned, and could not release a single sound. Mad, this guy must have gone mad to actually dare commit murder in the Green River Valley. Previously, though Ling Han had broken the rules, as long as some mighty figure had been willing to support him, a casual reprimand would have easily settled the matter. After all, he had not wounded anyone. But the situation was different now. The situation had culminated in death. Now that someone had died, the nature of the matter had become more serious and was a vicious incident. You, the remaining two members of the Tan clan were both pointing at Ling Han, their voices trembling so much they could not speak clearly. Just 3 clowns. Did you really think you had been assigned an easy task? Ling Han shook his head with a smirk. You guys are really idiots, not even aware of the fact that you have been sold. If I don't kill you, the crime will be too light. Did you guys really think that if I just gave you a slap, there would be someone out to target me? The two members of the Tan clan couldn't help but shiver. What Ling Han said was logical. Otherwise, this little bit of time from the moment their conflict began until now was enough for the powerful figures in the alliance to appear, yet why had there been no reaction at all? But you clearly knew this fact, so why had you still dared to make a move? Had you gone mad? Ling Han broke into a grin. I have not gone mad. It's just killing a few idiots, no big deal about it. You guys have been scuttling around all these days, and I have given you guys a chance, but you all are so determined to seek death, so I can only send you on your way. He moved, brandishing his sword. The 27 killing formations inside his body were channeled, and the two were completely no match for him. Pu, another 2 human heads flew up, blood gushing forth like a fountain. Everyone was watching in shock, dumbfounded. Though these 3 members of the Tan clan could only be considered the weakest among them in terms of strength, they were still heirs of a forbidden land, and could be considered prodigies themselves, yet they had been slaughtered as if they were just chickens. Ling Han's courage was commendable, but it was bloody courage, and definitely could not be seen as an example. Humph! A cold humph rang out. It was as if it came from the depths of 9 hells, astonishingly malicious. Next, several golden pathways spread over. A few demon masters had arrived, and they were not yellow demons, either, but rather black demons. Ling Han, how dare you? It was Yi Chengjong. When Ling Han had first arrived, it was he and Zheng Jing who had been in charge of helping Ling Han settle in. Ling Han broke into a grin, and retorted, as a cultivator, I should be decisive. Zheng Jing was also there, and he said, you are drawing calamity onto yourself. His face had an expression that said that he expected better from Ling Han. He was in fact from the open-minded party, but a black demon did not have much say in an argument of this level. As long as Ling Han did not kill anyone, they would be able to save him, but now, sigh. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.